Chapter 576. Li Mosin blushed and pulled her. It's nothing. Your brother is much better than me. Li Jianrui glanced at Li Jianqian, snorted, and said, My brother is not good. Desu is an idiot, stupid, and dirty. Li Jianqian bowed his head to play the game and turned a deaf ear. Such an attitude made Li Jianrui angry. She puffed up her face, put her hands on her hips, and ran to Li Jianqian and shouted, Desu is an idiot, Desu is stupid, Desu is dirty. Li Jianqian was killed in the game, shouted, and then rolled on the ground with his head in his hands. Li Jianrui was happy and laughed. Idiot, idiot. Go away, I'm playing the game. Li Jianqian got up and continued to fight. It's all because of this group of teammates. They made me fall. Li Jianrui didn't really understand. She squatted down and watched him play. Seeing him shooting arrows, she blinked her doll-like big eyes and said, Brother, can you let me play? No, you go play with Mosin. Li Jianrui was angry, stood up, and stamped her feet. Stingy Desu. Su Qianxi walked very quickly to the backyard. After seeing that the three children were safe and sound, she quietly breathed a sigh of relief. The bodyguards were in several places in the backyard, so there was no need to worry about safety. Li Jianrui saw Su Qianxi coming over, and immediately pouted. Her little face was red, her cheeks puffed up, and her eyes narrowed. Tears suddenly gushed out. She cried and rushed to her mother, shouting, Mom. Su Qianxi saw her like this, squatted down and hugged her, reaching out to wipe her tears. Her heart was broken, and she comforted, What's wrong with Ursu? Brother bullied me. Li Jianrui pointed to Li Jianqian, who was obsessed with playing the game, and her little face was angry. He refused to let me play the game. Stingy, I don't want to talk to him anymore. Su Qianxi smiled, walked over with her in her arms, and squatted down to watch Li Jianqian play the game. She just saw the word victory appear on it. Li Jianqian cheered and laughed loudly. Mom, look, I won, I won. Su Qianxi recognized it at a glance. This was an online game that had been popular for many years. Luo Zhan used to be so obsessed with it that he was in his 30s and did not even have a girlfriend. This kind of game. Who taught you to play? It's simply 666. She had played for a period of time before, but she was killed before she could cross over. After playing for 2 days, she felt bored. Uncle Luo Zhan taught me how to play. It's really fun. My sister also wants to play. Why don't you play with her? Su Qianxi coaxed. No way. My sister is so stupid. I don't want her. Li Jianqian spoke rudely. Li Jianrui pouted and cried loudly. Mom, Desu always calls me stupid. The bodyguards on the side couldn't help but laugh when they saw this scene. This little girl, she had been scolded for being stupid for the whole day, but she didn't even cry once. Why was he crying so much in front of Su Qianxi? Su Qianxi didn't know. She wiped her tears and said, Why don't you play with Brother Mosin? Let brother play alone. If you don't play with him, you play with Brother Mosin. Let Brother Mosin ignore your brother. Chapter 577. Li Jianrui made a face at Li Jianqian. However, Li Jianqian ignored her. Li Jianrui felt even more wronged. She got out of Su Qianxi's arms and went to play with Li Mosin. Su Qianxi looked at them and smiled. Desu was like his father, smart and precocious. Although Ursu loved to act coquettishly, she was also very sensible. Although not as good as Desu, she was much smarter than many 3-year-old children. Looking at the time, it was already past 2:00 in the afternoon. Su Qianxi turned and walked out of the backyard. Returning to the room, she took a photo of the logo with her mobile phone and gave it to Luo Zhan. Looking for something, of course, she had to find Luo Zhan. Just when Su Qianxi took a picture of the other side of the necklace, she accidentally found that there was a small, extremely difficult to find small hidden button on the back of the necklace. Her nails gently buckled, and the spring on it opened. With a snap, a small lid was suddenly opened. There was a fine gray powder, flying with the lid opened. Su Qianxi frowned and poured the small powder on the notebook. However, what was unexpected was that as soon as the fine gray powder was poured on it, it seemed to be attracted by something and automatically gathered at a spot. Su Qianxi's pupils suddenly shrank, and she poured the rest of the powder down. The powder was immediately absorbed and could not be rubbed down. Looking at the shape, it seemed to be absorbed into some words or patterns. What is this? Su Qianxi opened the bottom of the necklace. Under the lid, there were 2 letters. TL. Tangqing. Su Qianxi's heartbeat suddenly became faster. The rest of the powder had already been poured out by her. The 2 letters TL seemed to be showing a beautiful smile to her. This logo was Tang Menjing's, and TL belonged to Tangqing. She originally felt that Tangqing must have something to do with Tang Menjing. It seemed that it was necessary to cooperate with TL once. She closed the notebook and took it. Su Qianxi put the necklace in her pocket. The gray powder looked like some kind of chemical. If she guessed correctly, it should be magnet powder. She sent it to the research institute, and it was really magnet powder. Su Qianxi bought some and sprinkled it on the notebook, and it quickly absorbed into a few big words. Tycoon, rich, baccarat. What does that mean? Both Monopoly and Baccarat are common gambling methods in casinos. Could there be a connection between them? Wait, a casino. She subconsciously thought of the time when she was kidnapped by Bo Xiao 4 years ago. Wasn't that place a casino? Bo Xiao and Rong Anna were trading in Star City at that time, and this clue appeared on Tang Menjing's things. Now that TL was involved in this matter, all the clues seemed to have been put together. But what was missing? What was it? She frowned and couldn't help but think of the man who threw the necklace to her. That man didn't seem to want to harm her. With his skills, it was a piece of cake for him to do anything he wanted. Although he took her money and molested her that night, he didn't do any real harm to her or the child, right? It was as if a pair of extremely pale lips had appeared in front of her, and she couldn't help but think of a word, pale. Chapter 578. TL had developed rapidly in recent years. Of course, there was a big force behind it, but the most famous thing was their architectural design. The news that LS had decided to cooperate with TL shocked half of Kingstown. Even Tangqing felt very surprised. However, being surprised was just being surprised. How could he not do business that was delivered to his doorstep? However, what made Tangqing even more shocked was that Su Qianxi actually talked to her in person. She asked Tangqing to meet in Star City. In addition to Shuangyu, Su Qianxi also brought Li Jinnan's most trusted bodyguard. Special Assistant Bai followed Su Qianxi, holding a stack of documents and standing quietly behind. Su Qianxi saw Tangqing again and was still shocked by her face. Obviously, it was a face that had undergone plastic surgery. Although she had heavy makeup, it could not hide the stiffness of her face. However, after years of training, she had long learned to speak in human language when meeting people and speak in ghost language when meeting people. The discussion with Tangqing lasted from 2:00 in the afternoon to 5:00 in the afternoon. The two chatted for a long time, and Su Qianxi suddenly asked, "Do you know how to play baccarat?" Tangqing seemed a little surprised and nodded. "A little. I didn't expect President Su to meet me here. Do you want to play baccarat with me?" Yes, I haven't played for a long time, and my hands are itchy. You do? Tang Qing looked at her with a faint smile. Su Qianxi's eyes were sharp. Looking at her, she asked, "How do you know that I don't?" Tang Qing looked frank and said, "I have never heard of President Su going in and out of the casino. It is too unexpected." Oh. Su Qianxi's voice rose slightly, and she said ambiguously, "I thought you knew me before, but I didn't expect it to be me thinking too much." Tang Qing smiled. "I used to be just an employee of a small company. Because the boss's wife was afraid that I would seduce her husband, the boss fired me." Then she looked at Su Qianxi and touched her face. "Don't look at me like this. I used to be very beautiful." Su Qianxi's heart was even more uncontrollable. Her hand under the table on her thigh slightly moved. Was this Tang Qing reminding her of something? Su Qianxi increasingly felt that this woman was Tang Menjing. But where was the evidence? Where was the evidence? Su Qianxi almost asked her directly, "Are you Tang Menjing? Where is my husband? Where did you hide him?" Shuang Yu, who was behind, reached out and put his hand on her shoulder. Su Qianxi's body stiffened and then she calmed down. Looking at Tang Qing, she smiled brightly. "You look beautiful now, but it seems that Miss Tang is not confident enough. The makeup you put on is a bit thick. If you remove some of it, you may look better. I happen to have some knowledge in this area. Why don't I help you fix it?" Tang Qing touched her face and smiled happily. "You really know how to talk, but no need. Didn't you say you want to play baccarat? Let's go." Su Qianxi did not insist. She stood up and let Tang Qing walk in front. He secretly made a gesture to Shuang Yu, "Keep an eye on her." Shuang Yu did not respond and kept this matter in mind. Tang Qing was also followed by an assistant and a bodyguard. Comparing the lineup of the two, Su Qianxi seemed to have the upper hand. However, she had an inexplicable sense of crisis. Chapter 579. Dealer. Without hesitation, Su Qianxi took the chips handed over by Special Assistant Bai and put them down. "So big." Tang Qing raised an eyebrow. Her hot figure attracted many people's attention. Many people were stunned. In the first round, the dealer won. The second round, the third round, the seventh round, the dealer won. Tang Qing shook her head, looked at Su Qianxi with some concern, and said with slight regret, "Why don't you bet on the dealer? Look at you losing like this. That's real money. What a pity. I can still afford to lose so little money." Su Qianxi did not feel unhappy after losing money, but smiled very brightly and asked, "How many chips do we have left?" 1 million. In such a short time, you lost 1 million. Sure enough, the Li Group is rich. Tang Qing looked envious. My small company can't afford to lose. Indeed, if TL was really as strong as it seemed on the surface, they really couldn't afford to lose. Su Qianxi looked at her, slightly raised an eyebrow, and said indifferently, "The last round, all on the dealer." Special Assistant Bai felt nervous, but she still suppressed it all. "Miss Tang, you have won so much. Play with me." Tang Qing heard the words, smiled, and nodded. "Okay, 1 million it is." Tang Qing did win a lot just now, so she did not feel it was a big deal to bet 1 million. The dealer began to deal the cards, 1 idle, 2 dealers, 3 idle, and 4 dealers. The dealer had 9 points, and the dealer had 7 points. Special Assistant Bai was so excited that her cheeks were slightly red. Seeing the high stack of chips, she cheered. Tang Qing's face changed slightly, and Su Qianxi raised an eyebrow and smiled. "Your luck is good. Even if you lost badly at the beginning, you still made a comeback and became the biggest winner. Don't you think so, Miss Tang? Hearing that, Tang Qing's arms, which had been leisurely crossed, unconsciously tightened slightly. She still maintained a smile on her face, just like before. Su Qianxi saw this small movement, and her eyes narrowed. Tang Qing was unhappy. Tang Qing was pinching her arm. Although she was deliberately restraining it, the habitual movement could not be concealed. When Tang Menjing was unhappy, she liked to pinch her arm. This was a little habit she had since her last lifetime. Coincidence? Su Qianxi guessed, but at this moment, she had no time to think about it. With a bright smile on his face, he said to Assistant Bai briskly, Assistant Bai, let's get the chips. 10 million is enough for us to treat President Tang to dinner. Then he looked at Tang Qing and said, pick a place. What do you want to eat? Whatever. Since President Su is the host, why should I choose the place? Let's have seafood then. How about it? Su Qianxi smiled brightly. How about a seafood feast? Only this level is worthy of President Tang. Let's go. Su Qianxi reached out and put her hand on Tang Qing's shoulder. Tang Qing was a little frightened and moved away. Seeing Su Qianxi's surprised look, he explained with a smile, I don't like people touching my shoulder. I'm sorry. So was Tang Menjing. That was because when she was young, someone had placed a hand on her shoulder, and a caterpillar had fallen off. It was not a big deal, but Tang Menjing was traumatized at that time. Chapter 580. Su Qianxi suddenly understood and nodded. So that's the case. I'm sorry. When I'm happy, I like to hug people. I'm really sorry. Tang Qing smiled awkwardly, unconsciously pinching her arms with a pair of crossed palms. The lines in her mind that were about to collide suddenly connected. Tang Qing, Tang Menjing. Haha, however, if Tang Qing was Tang Menjing, why did Tang Menjing want to have plastic surgery? Tang Menjing was most satisfied with her face. Coquettish, delicate, and beautiful. Such a face made her the envy of everyone since she was a child. She was as proud as a peacock. But now, he destroyed his own face. Although she had been the daughter of a psychopath, murderer, and economic swindler 4 years ago and was still wanted all over the country, if it was just to hide her identity as Tang Menjing, the sacrifice was too big. With Tang Menjing's character, she would never want to do this. Then, there was only one reason. That was, she was disfigured. Therefore, she had to have plastic surgery. Therefore, she had to change her face and create a new identity. However, this was just Su Qianxi's guess. Whether she was Tang Menjing or not, it was enough to feed her a meal of seafood. No matter how a person's face and identity changed, their personality, habits, and physique could never change, right? Out of Star City, Tang Qing subconsciously wanted to return to her car. At the moment when Su Qianxi was about to get in the car, she suddenly thought of something and said, Wait, President Tang, we just did not talk about the liquidated damages. I think it is necessary to talk about it again. This is an RV. Why don't you come to my side? Such a sudden invitation not only slightly surprised Tang Qing, but also the bodyguard behind Tang Qing felt something was wrong and looked at her with some vigilance. Su Qianxi seemed to shrug helplessly and smiled. Come together. My RV is very big. I usually use it to take care of the children. Let's go together. Tang Qing exchanged a look with the bodyguard, and Su Qianxi said helplessly, Come here. Are you afraid that I will eat you? Tang Qing hesitated for a moment before slowly walking up and getting into Su Qianxi's RV with the bodyguard. The assistant got into Tang Qing's car and followed Su Qianxi's RV. This RV was very large and spacious, with the driver's seat and the front passenger seat in the front. In the back, there was a circle of folding chairs and a large red leather sofa, wide enough for an adult to lie down. After Tang Qing sat down, Su Qianxi really talked to her about the liquidated damages and the scope. Shuang Yu and Tang Qing's bodyguard sat together and said. After Su Qianxi said that, she suddenly exclaimed and said, "Why is your hair messy? This is not good." With that, she took out a black hair clip from her bag and said, "A girl should always be beautiful. Come, let me help you put it on." Tang Qing wanted to refuse, but Su Qianxi had put one hand on the sofa and the other on top of her head. Su Qianxi. And Tang, and she, Tang soon. Qiu Qing Su, she. She said. Soon, Su Qianxi, she, and she. Chapter 581. It's okay. He is too nervous. Tang Qing also smiled, and the car stopped. We are here. Let's get out. Well, guest first. Su Qianxi reached out. Tang Qing got out of the car with the bodyguard. Shuang Yu turned to look at Su Qianxi. Su Qianxi smiled at her, and Shuang Yu also smiled. Success. Su Qianxi got up and got out of the car. She took Tang Qing's arm and walked inside. The bodyguard frowned. Tang Qing was a little embarrassed and wanted to push Su Qianxi away. However, Su Qianxi did not seem to notice her resistance and asked the waiter to arrange a private room for them. Because there were few people, this private room was not big, so there was no bathroom in the private room. After looking around, Tang Qing felt relaxed and said, "I am going to the bathroom." Su Qianxi nodded. Go ahead. The male bodyguard naturally followed. Su Qianxi said, "You are going to the bathroom with me." Tang Qing smiled, but the bodyguard did not stop. After Tang Qing left, Shuang Yu also went out, standing at the door and watching them go away. The smile on Su Qianxi's face disappeared. She took out her cell phone from her bag and opened the locator app. Tang Qing's position was on it. Taking out a black earplug the size of a little finger, Su Qianxi stuffed it into her ear and covered her ears with her hair. That woman is getting more and more insidious. I haven't seen her for a few years, and she has learned how to be as cunning as Li Xiqing. It was Tang Qing's voice. Shoo, the bodyguard's voice was followed by silence. Fortunately, it is just an ordinary hair clip. Pfft, you think too highly of her. This bitch is so stupid that she wouldn't think of doing anything to the hair clip. However, I guess she has already started to suspect me. She knows I can't eat seafood. How can I avoid it now? To be honest, there are many people who are allergic to seafood. How can she think that you are Tang Menjing? No, she is not that stupid. She has been staring at my hand. I think she should have found something. And, what she just said, did you not hear it? Even if I fail miserably at the beginning, I'll still be the biggest winner after staking everything on the last throw. This is obviously a test and a provocation. Don't think too much. You're the biggest winner now. Even Li Xiqing can't beat you. You've beaten him like a dog these years. Who does she think she is? Hearing this, a sharp pain shot up from her chest all the way to her eyes. You are the biggest winner now. Even Li Xiqing can't beat you. I've been abused like a dog by you for the past few years. These words kept replaying in her mind. She felt a lump in her throat, and her vision was blurred. It's true, it's true. Li Xiqing was still alive. He was still alive. Although she had always believed that he had never died, when she heard the exact news, she still couldn't help but feel shocked. He wasn't dead, but what happened to him? Where was he now? What had Tang Menjing done to him? What was his current state? She knew nothing. Tang Menjing did not realize that all her secrets had been exposed to Su Qianxi. Hearing the bodyguard's words, she laughed proudly, ha ha ha. You're right. Even Li Xiqing can't beat me. Who does she think she is? Thank you for your consolation, Wax. Chapter 582. This sentence obviously touched Tang Menjing's greatest excitement, and her laughter sounded crazy and sick. Su Qianxi felt a dull pain in her heart. She clenched her fists and gritted her teeth. Tang Menjing. Tang Menjing would never have thought that the hairpin she gave her in the car was just a camouflage, and the real trick was under her black bag. She had secretly stuck a tracking device under it. Let's go back, or she will be more suspicious. If I did not need to use her to confuse those B***cheese, do you think I would be willing to cooperate with her? I am annoyed to see her. Tang Menjing's voice was bitter and disgusted. Soon, Su Qianxi heard the sound of high heels. She was back. Wiping her tears, Su Qianxi pretended to pick up the phone and put it to her ear. Tang Menjing had returned to her original appearance. Seeing Su Qianxi, she smiled. Seeing Su Qianxi on the phone, she did not say anything. Su Qianxi frowned deeper and deeper, as if she had heard extremely bad news. Okay, I see. I will be right there. See you later. Tang Menjing heard Su Qianxi's words and was overjoyed, but she pretended to be regretful and said, President Su, what's the matter? Su Qianxi hung up the phone and nodded. There is something urgent. I am afraid I can't accompany President Tang to dinner, but I come to this restaurant often. You can tell the waiter to take my order later. I am sorry. It's okay. President Su, you are too polite. Tang Menjing keenly noticed that Su Qianxi's eyes were slightly red and asked, but what is the matter? Why are you in such a hurry? You do not seem to be in a good mood. Su Qianxi shook her head, picked up her bag, and said, Nothing, just a private matter. In that case, I will go first. Okay. Su Qianxi adjusted her watch and walked toward the door. Shuang Yu and the male bodyguard behind her followed and soon left the room together. Tang Menjing and the bodyguard both breathed a sigh of relief and said, It seems that she just wants to invite me to dinner and has not suspected me. I knew it. How could this woman think so much with her brain? If she is Li Xiqing's brother, maybe it is a little more possible. No matter what, it's good that we haven't been exposed. We still need this layer of identity to cover up. Let's go. Let's go home and play with the puppy. Tang Menjing's voice was full of pride. When she said the word puppy, she even laughed in a sick way. Su Qianxi resisted the urge to turn around and slap her, forcing herself to go back to the car. Yang was driving, and she was not in a hurry to go home. Instead, she called Luo Zhan. Hack my phone. Her request was simple and clear. Before Luo Zhan could speak, the phone was hung up. Luo Zhan was dumbfounded, but he quickly invaded it. At a glance, he saw a point of light moving quickly, and the surrounding lines of the buildings were very clear. The screen quickly switched to WeChat. Then, Luo Zhan received a message from Su Qianxi. This is Tang Menjing. Li Xiqing is still alive. She locked him up. Luo Zhan's heart went cold when he saw this, and he didn't dare be careless in the slightest. Hearing the conversation between Tang Menjing and the bodyguard, Su Qianxi could not help trembling. Puppy, the puppy she was talking about, could it be Li Xiqing? Chapter 583. How could it be? How could it be? Li Xiqing was such a proud person. How could he be treated as such a creature? This was more painful than killing him. Su Qianxi sat on the sofa, covering her mouth. She couldn't help crying, and her vision was blurred. No, impossible. If this was the case, how could he accept it? How could he accept it? She knew him. She knew him too well. But at the same time, Tang Menjing, who was his childhood friend, also knew Li Xiqing very well. She knew what kind of method could make him suffer the most painful. Just imagining it, Su Qianxi felt that she could not bear it. She wanted to see him, she wanted to see him. Tears fell uncontrollably. Su Qianxi felt like there was a big hand holding her heart tightly, making it hard for her to breathe. The dark basement was a little damp. Vaguely, there was an indescribable dark atmosphere, seeping into the air and people's hearts. It was very dark, but in the basement where there was no sunlight all year round, it was impossible to tell whether it was day or night. She couldn't even see her fingers, and it was as dark as ink. In the darkness, there was a panting sound like a beast, rapid, crazy, and painful. Sharp high-heeled shoes tapped the ground, quickly forming a brisk rhythm, and she walked in. Tang Menjing was humming a tune, obviously in a very good mood. Jing Sao, the gatekeeper, saw her coming and automatically took out the key, opening an iron door, and then a wooden door. After that, she opened a door with an iron railing, and Tang Menjing was able to enter. Carrying a bag, Tang Menjing came in and turned on the light that had been turned off for a long time. The basement was separated by a solid iron cage, which was a space of less than 5 square meters. There was a toilet with toiletries in it. There was a simple plug-in electric water heater, a toilet, a mirror, a towel, a cup, a toothbrush, and a shaver. Just outside the toilet, there was a single bed. The bed was very clean and simple. There was only a pillow, a quilt, and a person. Other than that, there was nothing. A man was lying on top of it, curled up into a ball, hugging his knees. His body and head were covered in sweat, and his temples and neck were bulging with blue veins due to the pain. His entire body was red, and his face was pale from the pain. Due to not being exposed to the sun all year round, his originally healthy, wheat-colored skin had now become deathly pale. Her skin was so white that it was transparent, so white that it was translucent. One could clearly see the blood vessels beneath her skin. It was beautiful and delicate to the point of being ferocious. Li Xiqing hugged himself, gasping heavily and twitching. Seeing her coming in, he stretched his hand out of the iron cage and shouted incoherently, "Give me, Tang, tisk, tisk." Tang Menjing took his hand and pulled him to her chest. "Here. If you want it, I can give you anything. Do you want it? Tell me, yes or no." Tang Menjing looked at Tang Menjing. Li Xiqing's hand twitched, but when it touched her soft palm, he still pulled it back. "Give me, medicine, what did you say? I didn't hear you." "Louder." Tang Menjing deliberately smiled and turned to Jing Sao. "Open the door. I will go in and serve him." Chapter 584. Tang Menjing went in through the open door and threw her bag on the ground. As soon as she entered the door, she rushed at Li Xiqing, lying on top of him and said, "Do you want it? What do you want? Tell me, do you want me? Ha! Go away." The veins on Li Xiqing's face bulged. He roared and pushed her hard with both hands. Immediately, he kicked her chest and sent her into the corner. Tang Menjing screamed and soon fell to the ground. The bodyguard who accompanied her was shocked and immediately came up to help Tang Menjing up. However, at the same time, he was furious. He went up and lifted Li Xiqing's tall body, threw him out, and stomped on his stomach. Li Xiqing was spasming, holding the bodyguard's leg, unable to resist. The bodyguard squatted down and punched Li Xiqing's pale face, cursing, "Damn it, a drug addict is still so arrogant. I will let you be arrogant." Li Xiqing screamed, blood flowing from the corner of his mouth. He could only hold the bodyguard's hand and could do nothing else. "Stop!" Tang Menjing exclaimed. "If you kill him, who will do the work?" The bodyguard immediately stopped, lifted Li Xiqing up, and threw him to the corner. Li Xiqing fell to the ground and moaned. Su Qianxi heard the voice coming from the other side and burst into tears. Those voices were like sharp arrows, mercilessly piercing her heart, again and again, endlessly. "Enough! Stop, stop!" Su Qianxi shrank in the corner of the bed, holding the quilt. How could this happen? Don't do this. Call the police, yes, call the police. She now knew where Tang Menjing was. She could call the police to arrest her. She could catch her. Su Qianxi hurriedly found her cell phone. Holding the phone, she realized that her hands were shaking so badly that she could not control them at all. Fear, desperation, and anger. All the emotions were intertwined. At this moment, Su Qianxi suddenly felt at a loss. If she called the police, would Li Xiqing also go to jail for taking drugs? How could someone like Li Xiqing accept going to jail? That was even worse than killing him. But if he didn't call the police, didn't look for them, and let them abuse him? What to do, what to do? Su Qianxi's mind was blank. Staring at 110, her fingers trembling, she did not press it in the end. Li Xiqing's face and body were stained with blood, and he looked miserable. Tang Menjing looked at him, sneered, and reached out to Jing Sao. "Medicine." Jing Sao took out a small transparent bag from her pocket. There was a white crystal-like object in it. Tang Menjing glanced at it and said to the bodyguard, "Hold him down. I want to ask him to take his medicine." With a cruel smile, the bodyguard went forward, pressed Li Xiqing down, and opened his mouth with one hand. Tang Menjing opened the sealed bag and poured the liquid into his mouth. Chapter 585. Tang Menjing laughed triumphantly, her voice cruel and morbid. She said, "Li Xiqing, do you know what you look like now?" Li Xiqing did not care what she said at all, holding the transparent bag and pouring it into his mouth, eagerly swallowing, eager for more, more. After pouring everything in, he leaned against the wall with his eyes squinted, trembling with pleasure and comfort. Seeing Li Xiqing like this, Tang Menjing laughed even louder. Standing up, she looked down at him and said, "Now, you are like a dog, a dead dog that anyone can step on. Do you know who I went to see today? Your President Su is amazing. She's a woman with 2 children, managing such a big company, and managing it so well. She hasn't been with a man for so many years. She's so great." Li Xiqing still did not open his eyes when he heard the words and sneered. Tang Menjing smiled, took out her cell phone, and clicked on a photo. In the photo, Su Qianxi was wearing a light green dress, looking clean and fresh. Standing with Shuangyu, she looked even more ladylike and noble. Li Xiqing saw this photo and did not react at all. "Hey, what's wrong now? You don't even want to look at your wife. That's okay. What about this one?" In the other photo, there were 2 little dolls, looking smart and smart, especially the little girl, wearing a pink princess dress. Her facial features looked similar to Su Qianxi's. Puffing her cheeks, she was angrily talking to the little boy next to her, looking very cute. It was his daughter. His daughter. His and Su Qianxi's daughter was so beautiful. Li Xiqing's eyes softened slightly, but he quickly looked away. "Is it useful? You keep me here now." What's the difference between me and being dead? No, 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 there is still a difference. Our company still depends on you, Li Xiqing. Tang Menjing smiled and took out a stack of documents. TL, Tang Group and Li Group. Have you forgotten our surnames? Come, deal with these things so that you can take the medicine tomorrow. Tang Menjing threw all the documents on him. When she was about to leave, she suddenly remembered something and said, "Oh, by the way, I signed a contract with Su Qianxi today. The TL Group under your name and the LS Group under your name have officially cooperated. Are you very happy?" Ha ha ha. Jing Saw, bring me the computer. Jing Saw didn't say anything. She took the computer and put it on the ground. Don't turn off the lights. Bring it to me when he's done. Oh, and remember to put the computer away. Yes, Miss Tang. Tang Menjing glanced at him coldly, picked up the bag on the ground, and left with the bodyguard. Jing Saw stayed inside, watched them leave, and locked the door from the inside. Mr. Li, be good. Don't make it difficult for me. Jing Saw's voice was not low, and Tang Menjing could hear it clearly. He smiled coldly and said to the bodyguard behind him, "Tell the finance department to increase Jing Saw's salary by 1/3. Yes. Hearing Tang Menjing's footsteps going away, Li Xiqing scratched his throat and looked like he was about to throw up. What did you make this time? It tastes awful. Although he was disgusted, his voice was very low. Chapter 586. Li Xiqing looked like he was in pain, and his voice was very low. Improve the taste next time. Jing Saw, Li Xiqing flipped through the stack of documents brought by Tang Menjing and read them line by line. Soon, his eyes fell on a document. LS Architectural Design Requirements and Needs. When Li Xiqing saw the words on it, his eyes suddenly lit up. Jing Saw had been with him here for more than 3 years. How could this little change in Li Xiqing be hidden from her eyes? What's wrong? Jing Saw leaned over and glanced at the document. Li Xiqing's lips curled up slightly. It was very light, but it clearly showed his good mood. There was a faint pain in the corner of his mouth. Li Xiqing reached out and wiped the blood off. His eyes became cold, glanced at Jing Saw, and said in a deep voice, "Do you want to go back to the police station?" Of course. Jing Saw rolled her eyes at him. Don't you want to go back to see your wife and children? These days, I may have to go out a little longer. You have to keep an eye on me. What are you going to do? Jing Saw was anxious, and her voice was very low. Do you know that you have been going out these days? It scared me. As I said before, we can go out in half a year at most. Li Xiqing's voice was very low, and he did not look up from the document. He slowly turned a page. When was that? Half a month ago. That is 5.5 months, but now with my wife's help, we can all go out in 2 months at most. 2 months, maybe they could make it home in time for the 2 little guys' birthdays. Thinking of this, Li Xiqing's eyes were slightly soft. Jing Saw's eyes lit up, overjoyed. Looking at Li Xiqing, she rubbed her hands excitedly. Really? But soon, her face changed, and she asked seriously, "You went to your wife for help?" Yes. How can you do this? Didn't we agree, not exposed? Li Xiqing interrupted her, looking at her with a pair of cold eyes, with an inexplicable meaning. Since I promised you, I will keep my promise, but the rest of the time is up to you. Jing Saw looked at him, a little surprised. Really? Li Xiqing ignored her and looked at the document again. He said coldly, "Guard the door." Humph. Jing Saw glared at him but quickly went to the door. What a joke! If others found out about their little secret, it would be terrible. Li Xiqing turned on the computer and quickly typed on the keyboard. A black screen quickly popped up, and blue, white, and red codes appeared on the screen. Setting the location in Canada, Li Xiqing clicked on a small temporary station. She became more and more panicked, unable to make up her mind. Hearing the words coming from the other end, Su Qianxi leaned against the headboard, feeling lost. Holding the phone, she stared at the 3 numbers, her fingers trembling, and finally deleted it. She opened the address book and called Li Jinan. Li Jinan quickly answered the call. From the sound of his voice, he sounded very awake. Sister-in-law. Hearing his voice, Su Qianxi immediately felt that she had found her backbone and couldn't help but burst into tears. Brother-in-law. Chapter 587. I found him, he is still alive, still alive. Su Qianxi's voice was hurried and choked. He is at Tang Menjing's place. He is locked up. She was already sobbing. Brother-in-law, let's go save him. He must be in great pain. Such a proud man had been locked up in a place for more than 3 years, almost 4 years. Li Xiqing must be in great pain. And, he was also taking drugs. Tang Menjing actually forced him to take drugs. Su Qianxi felt that she was about to collapse. What to do, she did not want to see Li Xiqing like this. What would Li Xiqing look like now? Stooped. Dispirited. Pale. Thin. How could he stand it? She had to save him. She had to save him. Li Jinan's heart skipped a beat, and a pair of cold eyes flashed with disbelief. His first reaction was to ask, "Where are you?" I am at home. Where is my second brother? Su Qianxi was already incoherent. Li Jinan composed himself and said, "Don't worry, I will go to the old house. Wait for me." Okay. Li Jinan hung up the phone, took the car key, and went out the door. Su Qianxi's phone was hung up, but her heart was even emptier. Picking up the phone, Su Qianxi was also listening to the rustling sound in her ears. No, Tang Menjing was not with Li Xiqing. Su Qianxi was disappointed, but at the same time, she felt lucky. Suddenly, the phone vibrated. It was a message. Su Qianxi unlocked the phone and opened it. The words on it were frowny face L. There is a secret breach of contract loophole in the TL contract. Do not leak it when signing the contract. Su Qianxi looked at the message and was slightly dazed. How did he know about her cooperation with TL? He seemed to know her and the Li family very well, and his vision for the market was also very unique. What was even more amazing was that his vision was almost the same as Li Xiqing's. Who exactly was this fellow? Su Qianxi stared at it for a long while and replied, "Who are you?" Not surprisingly, there was no reply. Like a stone thrown into the sea, not even the slightest ripple appeared. Holding the phone for a long time, she wanted to put it down and received another reply, "I will not harm you." Yes, he wouldn't harm her. But who could it be? It had always been this grayish-white avatar. The community, blogs, and information were all blank. Registration age, identity address, everything was fake. Who was it? Who was it? Endless possibilities flashed through her mind. L should be the first letter of the alphabet. Among all the people she knew, Luo Zhan, Lu Yihan, Li Jinan, Li Beixing, Yu Lili, Lu Anan, and Lin Wanting could all be L. Luo Zhan, Lin Wanting, and Lu Anan could be ruled out. If Li Jinan or Li Beixing had any ideas, they could have told them in person. Lu Yihan. Su Qianxi straightened up and opened the chat window with him on her cell phone. There was a hip-hop monkey with 2 rows of big white teeth smiling. Lu Yihan majored in IT. When he was in high school, he was already the prince of hackers. It should not be a problem for him to change his address. In addition, for so many years, he had been treating her well. Could it be? Chapter 588. Over the years, Louis Han had only dabbled in the IT field. Although the development was very fast, with Louis Han's cleverness, it was not impossible for him to develop in real estate. Could it be that he had actually dabbled in it secretly, but because of her, because of the Lee family, he chose to help her silently instead of telling her directly? The more Su Qianxi thought about it, the more she felt it was possible. However, the more likely it was, the more upset she felt. For so many years, she knew better than anyone else how Louis Han had treated her. Even the people around her had begun to persuade her to make do with Louis Han, and there was no need to wait for a dead man to come back. Although Louis Han did not say anything, Su Qianxi knew that he was willing, very willing. However, how could she, the better he was to her, the more flustered she felt. She had to avoid him. Otherwise, when Li Xiqing came back, what would he think? But this L. If it was really Louis Han, then she would not be able to pay him back. Just when Su Qianxi was upset, there was a knock on the door. Su Qianxi got out of bed and opened the door. It was Li Jinan. Li Jinan was a bit travel-worn, wearing simple home clothes. When he saw her, he looked slightly relaxed and asked, "What's the matter?" "Let's talk in the living room." Su Qianxi gently pushed him and closed the door. Although Li Jinan was Li Xiqing's younger brother, the uncle of the child and her, they were still alone. In the middle of the night, she had to avoid arousing suspicion. Li Jinan also understood and nodded. Looking down, he found that Su Qianxi was barefoot and said, "Sister-in-law." "What?" Su Qianxi turned her head. "Shoes." "No need, if my second brother sees it, he will be distressed." Su Qianxi heard that and walked to the living room. Her voice was slightly choked, as if she was mocking, "He will not see it." Li Jinan looked at her and did not speak. But in the depths of his eyes, there was the deepest pity hidden. Not only his second brother, but other people would also feel distressed if they saw it. But she would never know. She would never know. Su Qianxi went to the sofa and sat down, holding the phone in her hand, slightly trembling. She opened the GPS app and played the contents of the eavesdropping. She removed the earplugs and handed them to Li Jinan. Her big almond-shaped eyes were filled with helplessness and fear. Li Jinan took it and pressed her down calmly. He comforted her in a low voice, "Don't panic. Calm down." She nodded and sat down. He sat down on the sofa in front of her and put the earplugs in his ears. The man's heavy breathing and painful howls, and the woman's sick and crazy laughter, made Li Jinan's eyes turn cold. She covered her mouth and curled her legs. Her mind was filled with what Li Xiqing might do at this moment. The tall and straight figure in her memory overlapped with the Junko addiction in her memory. She couldn't imagine it. After Li Jinan finished listening, it was already half an hour later. Seeing him take off the earplugs, Su Qianxi couldn't wait. She put her hands on the coffee table and looked at him. He is suffering. Tang Menjing is abusing him. "Uncle, let's go find him and save him, okay?" Li Jinan looked at her and was silent for a moment. He asked, "In addition to this, what other evidence do you have? Did everyone chop their hands today?" Chapter 589. Su Qianxi was dazed and looked at him incredulously. Her voice was slightly hoarse. "Isn't this evidence enough? She is calling his name, she is calling Li Xiqing. That person is him, Li Xiqing. But, how can you be sure that the woman inside is Tang Menjing?" Li Jinan looked at her, put the phone on the table, put his hands on his legs, and looked at her. From beginning to end, there is no word about Tang Menjing. Tang Qing now has nothing to do with the Tang family, and there is no connection with the Li family. What about the motive? If you take this to report to the police, what if she denies it and even accuses you? What are you going to do then? Su Qianxi paused and was speechless for a while. Despair rushed at her like a tide, beating her to the point where she couldn't fight back at all. What to do, what to do? Su Qianxi's mind at the moment was blank. How did you start to suspect Tang Qing? This woman looked normal, and her style and appearance were very different from Tang Menjing. Even he did not doubt her identity. How did Su Qianxi know? Su Qianxi told him about the mysterious man. Naturally, she automatically skipped the part where she was taken advantage of. As she spoke, she suddenly remembered Elle's words. Taking the phone, Su Qianxi opened the social media app and said, "You see, someone is helping us. This person has been helping us. If we have something on TL when we sign the contract, can we plan something else and rescue him?" Who is this? Li Jinan took the phone and looked up. The enthusiastic netizen you mentioned before, is this Elle? Su Qianxi nodded quickly. It is this person. He has been helping me and has always been for the good of the Li family. Although I do not know him, he will never harm us. How do you know? I have been talking to him for 4 years. Hearing Su Qianxi's words, Li Jinan felt a bit absurd. He curled his lips coldly and said without looking up, "What if the trap he set for 4 years is to lure you into it?" Impossible. Su Qianxi denied this possibility without thinking. He will not. Li Jinan paused for a moment and looked up at her. Why? Why? Because that person was probably Louis Han. Anyone in the world could hurt her, but not Louis Han. Absolutely not. But facing Li Jinan's gaze, she could not say that it was likely to be Louis Han. He shook his head slowly and said, "There is no why. This is my trust in him." Seeing Li Jinan's suspicious look, she added, "You have to know that a woman's intuition has always been very accurate." As he spoke, Li Jinan had already scrolled to the top of the chat log. Su Qianxi had used her phone for a long time, so she kept a lot of records. The more Li Jinan looked at the man, the more he found his tone familiar. His eyes darkened slightly. He opened Elle's account and copied it to himself. Then, he deleted the record and tossed the phone back. Let's wait and see. I'll sign the contract with TL. Chapter 590. Then, Su Qianxi seemed to think of something and stared at him. Her eyes were wet, and she said in a trembling voice, "Do you think I am lying to you, uncle?" "Sister-in-law, calm down." Li Jinan did not panic at all in the face of her questioning. Just after Su Qianxi finished the story, he already had a guess in his mind. However, this guess was just a guess, and Li Jinan needed to verify it. At this moment, facing Su Qianxi's attitude, Li Jinan looked as usual and whispered to her, "I believe in my brother." "Sister-in-law, now there is a most direct way, that is to expose the true face of Tang Qing." Su Qianxi sat down, holding her head, and found it difficult to accept. She knew where he was, and she knew that he was suffering. But why couldn't she find him back? Why couldn't they do anything about it? Tang Menjing has been pretending to be Tang Qing for so long. It is not easy to reveal her true identity to the world. Li Jinan looked at her, and his eyes were even more bottomless. Faintly, there was a shadow of Li Xiqing in them. He was very calm and said, "My brother has been trapped for so long. It's not easy to break through there and save him all at once. If we call the police, not to mention whether my brother can accept being in jail, maybe when the police just arrive at the door, they will transfer him. What should we do? What should we do? Su Qianxi completely lost her mind at this moment. Hearing this, she yelled at Li Jinan, "Are you just going to sit back and do nothing? I have been looking for him for so many years. Do you want me to give up like this?" Soon there was the sound of the door opening, and the light was turned on. Su Qianxi wiped her tears, leaned on the sofa, and did not move. Qin Shuhua and Li Xiao both came out, wearing pajamas. Seeing them like this, the couple looked at each other. Qin Shuhua's face was worried, while Li Xiao's face was as calm as water, looking at this side. Li Jinan did not seem to notice that they were behind. Looking at Su Qianxi, he said calmly, "Leave this matter to me, sister-in-law. I will give you a reply as soon as possible." "What is it?" The old man walked over with his walking stick. "It's the middle of the night and your uncle and sister-in-law are actually quarreling?" "No." Su Qianxi sniffed and said in a nasal voice. She walked toward Grandpa and held his arm. "We didn't fight. Grandpa, let me help you back." The old man didn't go back. He looked at Li Jinan and said, "Jinan, did you make your sister-in-law angry?" Li Jinan stood up, wearing simple casual home clothes. He looked at Su Qianxi and said, "No, I just have something to discuss with my sister-in-law. Now that it's all settled, I'll go back." Ouch! Qin Shuhua's heart ached for him. She grabbed him and said, "It's so late. You should sleep at home. Your room has always been tidy. It's not a big deal." "No, I still have something to deal with. Mom, go to bed early." Li Jinan patted Qin Shuhua's hand comfortingly. He glanced at Su Qianxi before turning and walking out the door. Chapter 591. Su Qianxi choked and shook her head. It was better not to tell the elders about things that she was not sure about. If they could not save Li Xiqing, they would have to worry about him with them. Seeing her eyes swollen from crying, Qin Shuhua did not say anything. She told Su Qianxi to go to bed early and went into the room with Li Xiao. When Li Jinan returned home, he took out the computer, logged into his social media account, and searched for L's account. Li Xiqing. Li Jinan's fingers moved quickly and sent a short message. Li Xiqing was processing the documents and saw the code on the computer. He clicked it and a message popped up. Frowny face Li 3, since you can send a message, why don't you come back? Li Xiqing looked at the nickname, Li 3, Li San. It was really Li San's style. Li Xiqing's cold eyes were deeper. Looking at Li Jinan's questioning words, he pursed his lips, put his fingers on the keyboard, and typed a line of words, "It's not time yet." However, after thinking about it, Li Xiqing still deleted that line of words and replied, "I'm fine. Don't worry about me." The sound of high heels came from outside. Li Xiqing's eyes narrowed, and he typed, "Dell." The temporary desktop suddenly collapsed. On the computer desktop, there was only one unfinished document left. Tang Menjing walked in and saw Li Xiqing typing the document. She chuckled proudly. "Not bad, Jing Sao. Make sure he takes his medicine on time tomorrow." "Yes, Miss Tang." Li Xiqing looked at her back, and his eyes became colder. Soon, when Li Jinan saw those words, he immediately replied, "Where are you?" No response. Li Jinan looked at the computer screen and was silent for a long time. He took a cigarette pack on the table, took out a cigarette, and slowly lit it. Lying on the sofa, he narrowed his eyes and fell into contemplation. The signing with TL was scheduled for Friday afternoon. It was Li Jinan. Su Qianxi could not calm down in the office. She couldn't wait to know the extent of the confrontation between him and Tang Menjing. Just when she was feeling anxious, she received a call from home. Seeing the word old house, Su Qianxi adjusted her mood and picked it up. Hello. Mom. Hearing the sweet voice, Su Qianxi's anxious heart was immediately soothed. She unconsciously smiled and responded. Mom, great-grandpa said that tomorrow is Saturday. Li Jinyue's voice was very soft, very sweet and tender, making Su Qianxi's heart melt. Sitting on the chair, she stretched and asked softly, "What's wrong with Saturday?" Li Jianyue looked at the old man in front of her, who had a look of anticipation on his face. She said the lines that the old man had prepared for her. Ursu wants to go to the amusement park. Daesu and brother Mosin want to go too. Mommy will take us to the amusement park to play tomorrow, okay? Tomorrow. Su Qianxi seemed to think about it. Does Ursu want to go herself? Li Jianyue hesitated for a moment and looked at the old man who was instructing her. The old man was so anxious that he mouthed, "Yes, you're right." Li Jianyue looked distressed. She nodded and said, "I want to go myself, but the little girl's words made the old man anxious. He covered his face with his dry hands and couldn't bear to look at it. Chapter 592. Seeing her great-grandfather like this, Ursa was amused and said with a smile, "But Daesu wants to go more than I do, but he is too embarrassed to call you, so he asked me to call him." Is Ursa very obedient? Su Qianxi heard that there was something wrong with Ursa's voice, but she did not think much and chuckled. You only know how to trick your brother. It must be you who wants to go, little girl. Li Jianyue smiled and said, "I did not. I am a little princess, not a little girl. So are we going tomorrow or not?" "Well, let's go. I haven't taken you out for a long time." "Oh yeah." Li Jianyue cheered. "Then let's go to the amusement park tomorrow. I will tell my brother." "Bye, Mom." "Bye." Su Qianxi's smile became wider and wider, and her mood suddenly became a lot better. Hanging up the phone, she looked at the phone screen and found that there was another missed call. A long-lost name, Rong Haiyue. Su Qianxi looked at this name, picked up the phone, and called Rong Haiyue back. The other side quickly picked up, and Rong Haiyue's voice sounded a bit surprised. "Su Qianxi." "Yes," Su Qianxi responded. "What's the matter?" "I have arrived in Kingstown with your mother. Can I go to your house and see the two little guys?" Rong Haiyue's voice was cautious and tentative, as if he was afraid of offending her. In the past few years, Rong Haiyue had always talked to her like this. Without the magnanimity of a savior or the dignity of a father, he always carefully wanted to please her and get close to her. Su Qianxi knew that he wanted her forgiveness. Hearing this, Su Qianxi pursed her lips, feeling a little guilty and distressed. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do this." However, before she said it, Rong Haiyue said, "I bought toys for the children. Ursu should like dolls at her age, right? And Daesu, I don't know what he likes, so I bought some storybooks. If it is not convenient to go home, I will go to your company and send the things to you. You can pick them up, okay? Go home." Su Qianxi felt sad and inexplicably sour. The children are at home. She can go there directly. I am still busy and will go back later. Rong Haiyue was overjoyed. "That's great, After saying that, she seemed to realize that her reaction might be a little too loud, and her voice became a little softer. She said, "Then you go ahead with your work, I'll go over there, you, come back early." "Yes." "Then, goodbye. See you later." When Rong Haiyue heard this, he suddenly felt that the world was bright. He could hear the excitement in his voice. Well, see you later. She hung up the phone and leaned against the chair, exhausted. This way of getting along was so tiring. Su Qianxi still could not calm down to deal with business, so she simply piled everything together and took it home. When he got home, Rong Haiyue and Rong Xian were already at home. They were playing with new toys with the children in the living room. Seeing Su Qianxi coming in, Li Jianyue was the most excited. Holding the big Barbie doll that Rong Haiyue bought for her, she ran to her and shouted, "Mom, look, Rong Haiyue bought me a doll. It's so beautiful." Su Qianxi squatted down and picked her up with a smile. She tapped her nose and said, "What, Rong Haiyue, call him Grandpa." Chapter 593. Call him Grandpa. The 3 words scared Rong Haiyue so much that the one-piece figurine that he gave to Li Jianxian fell to the ground. Rong Xian also looked at Su Qianxi with disbelief on her face. Li Jianxian saw it and immediately got off the sofa, picked up Zorro, and patted the dust. He was about to say something, but after seeing the subtle expressions between the adults, he swallowed his words. Seeming to have noticed their gazes, Su Qianxi also looked in their direction. There were traces of fire scars on Rong Haiyue's face and body. Because it was summer, Rong Haiyue wore a simple short-sleeved striped t-shirt, revealing the faint scars on his neck, hands, and face. Not much, and because of maintenance, it had faded a lot. However, Su Qianxi knew that it was the most accurate evidence that Rong Haiyue almost lost his life for them. Seeing their eyes, Su Qianxi smiled at them and blushed slightly. Li Jianrui, who was more than 3 years old, did not notice the subtle atmosphere between the adults. Tilting her head, she said, "Grandpa." "But Grandpa Song is also a grandpa. Only Mom's father is called Grandpa. I already have a grandpa, so who should I call Grandpa in the future? Grandpa Song is also a grandpa, and Grandpa Rong is also a grandpa." Su Qianxi put her forehead on Li Jianrui's forehead, gently rubbed, and whispered, "In the future, he is a grandpa, and Rong Xian is a grandma. Come, call them." Li Jianrui held the doll in her hand and turned to look at Rong Xian and Rong Haiyue. She said in a sweet voice, "Grandpa, Grandma." When Rong Haiyue heard it, he suddenly laughed, and his eyes were filled with warmth, but he quickly restrained himself. He bowed his head slightly and nodded. "Good girl." Little Li Jianxian was facing Rong Haiyue. Seeing that his eyes were obviously wet, he opened his eyes and looked at him. This feeling was a bit strange. He thought that Rong Haiyue was a tough guy. He heard that he was a very powerful soldier, just like Grandpa. However, he had only seen the scene of Grandpa majestic and domineering, and had never seen Grandpa cry. Shouldn't Rong Haiyue be the same as Grandpa? Even because of the scars on Rong Haiyue's body, Li Jianxian felt that Rong Haiyue was more ruthless than Li Xiao. But now, Grandpa, Li Jianxian blinked and looked at Rong Haiyue. "Are there any other models?" Rong Haiyue nodded and reached out to pick him up. His voice was obviously tinged with some relief and joy. He replied, "Yes." Li Jianxian never liked to be hugged, but it was obvious that he was happy. Forget it, for the sake of the figurine, he had to endure the humiliation. Su Qianxi. Rong Xian was not as tolerant as Rong Haiyue. Her tears fell, but there was a big smile on her face. Li Jianyue's eyes were full of surprise. "Hey, Grandma is crying." "Why?" Rong Xian wiped her tears and shook her head. "I'm happy. I didn't cry. Come, let me hug you." She stood up and reached out to Li Jianyue. Li Jianyue grabbed the doll and stuck her body to Rong Xian. She said, "Grandma, the doll hasn't worn panties yet. I have to let her wear panties. Can you find me panties?" "Okay, come on, Ursu, look inside and see which one looks like a pair of underpants." Lee stood at the edge of the corridor in the living room and watched from afar. His eyes were full of envy. Chapter 594. He also wanted to have a mother, grandparents, little uncles and big uncles who loved him so dearly. However, he was not expected by the world since he was born. His biological mother, just before he was 1 month old, wanted to throw him to death. This incident was spread as a joke in the orphanage, and he was laughed at by all the children. He was a monster, because he looked like a foreigner, so his biological mother wanted to throw him to death. Thinking of this, little Mosin had an inferiority complex in his heart, and the uncontrollable sadness made him at a loss. Biting his lip, Lee Mosin looked over there, let go of the hand on the wall, and turned around. "Mosin." Su Qianxi's voice. Lee Mosin was about to leave, and looked over with some surprise. Su Qianxi's delicate face showed a gentle smile, and she was waving at him. Lee Mosin ran over excitedly and shouted, "Auntie! Why did you come out so late?" Rong Xian rebuked and took another gift box from the side. "This is for you. Open it and see if you like it." Lee Mosin felt even more surprised and looked at Rong Xian incredulously. His little heart was pounding. "Really, this is for me?" Rong Xian nodded with a smile and reached out to rub his little head. "You've grown so big. How old are you?" Lee Mosin looked at her, and there was a ruddy luster on his snow-white and smooth face. He said, 4.5 years old. Lee Mosin was a little nervous, but more than that, there was a kind of emotion that he still couldn't understand. His heart was slightly sour, the tip of his nose was slightly astringent, and his eyes were a little hot, but Lee Mosin's heart was happy. Very happy, very happy. "I'm just a little older than them." Su Qianxi pulled Lee Mosin over and held him at her feet. She whispered, "Thank Grandma." Lee Mosin held the box and looked up at Su Qianxi. The woman on top of his head was really smiling at him. So gentle, so gentle. Just like his mother's smile in his dream. Lee Mosin felt like crying, but at this time, if he cried out, it would be too shameful. Holding back his tears, Lee Mosin asked in a choked voice, "Should I call her Grandma too?" "But..." "Hey, Brother Mosin is crying." Li Jianyue held the doll in her arms. Her round eyes widened as if she had discovered a new continent. "Is Brother Mosin crying?" Lee Mosin immediately pulled a long face and said, "I didn't. But I clearly heard you cry. Are you crying because you don't want to call me Grandma?" "Humph, too bad. I didn't." Lee Mosin deliberately put on a straight face, but soon, a pair of blue eyes grew, looked at Rong Xian, and said, "Thank you, Grandma. Be good." Rong Xian stroked his dark brown curly hair and pinched his face. "You're so good-looking, just like a doll." "Grandma, I'm pretty." Li Jianyue was unhappy. She rubbed herself in Rong Xian's arms, pouted, and said coquettishly, "I'm prettier than Brother Mosin. The teachers in the kindergarten all say that I'm the prettiest little princess. Right, brother?" Li Jianqian was playing with Luffy's hand and didn't hear what his sister was saying. Li Jianyue kicked his hand unhappily and asked, "Do I look good?" "Yes." Li Jianqian didn't look up and said directly, "Ursu is the prettiest." Dash. Chapter 595. Perfunctory, obviously perfunctory. The adults all laughed when they heard it, but Li Jianyue still didn't understand what was wrong. Seeing the adults laughing, she was a little proud. "Brother Mosin, am I the most beautiful?" Yes, Versu is the most beautiful. Li Mosin looked serious, and a pair of blue eyes looked at Li Jianyue's pink little face, shining with a strange brilliance. Li Jianyue was even happier, proudly raised her chin and snorted, and then looked at the box in Li Mosin's hand with her eyes shining. Don't you want to see what Grandma gave you? Look. Li Mosin looked at her expectant eyes and pretended to be serious with a straight face. He couldn't help but smile, put the gift box on the table, and untied the ribbon. Li Jianyue stretched her neck and looked over, and saw the dark metal luster at a glance. She blinked and asked, "What is this?" Li Mosin took out the things inside and found that they were small parts, and there was a big picture of a car in the middle. Assembly car. Li Mosin's eyes lit up, and he couldn't wait to open the packaging. A pile of small dark metal fell down, and Li Mosin held it in his hand, a little excited. It's really an assembly car, so beautiful. Li Jianyue held the doll and said with some disdain, "What's beautiful about it? It's dark." But when Li Jianqian heard the words, assembly car, his eyes immediately raised from the doll and looked over. His eyes lit up, and he immediately got down from Rong Haiyue's leg and ran up. Wow, it's really an assembly car. Li Jianqian rubbed his hands. Mosin, let's do it together. I can do it too. Okay. Li Mosin carefully put the parts back, and his face couldn't hide the joy. Li Jianyue was a little unhappy, and she pouted and struggled to get down from Rong Xian. She leaned over and said, "I want to do it too." "Go away, you only know how to make trouble." Li Jianqian unceremoniously threw her a contemptuous look. Li Jianyue's little face puffed up, and she took Li Mosin's hand. "Brother Mosin, I want to play too." Li Mosin smiled and held her palm with his little hand. He said, "Okay, let's do it together. Brother Mosin is the best." Li Jianyue smiled and snorted at Li Jianqian. She forced her way between the two of them. Seeing this, Su Qianxi couldn't help but laugh. She helped them pick up the parts and said, "Let's go inside and play. Daesu, take Mosin and his sister in." Okay. Li Jianqian was a little excited, but he did not forget to put on the figurine behind him. Just like that, Li Mosin held the gift box in one hand and Li Jianyue in the other. The little princess was also holding a doll in her arms. Li Jianqian, on the other hand, was holding a few figurines. He followed them calmly, but his pace could not hide his excitement. Watching the children jumping in, she sat at the coffee table, pressed the button to boil the water, and replaced the tea leaves. She then brewed some tea that she had recently gotten. His movements were slow and smooth, elegant and skillful. "Is there anything you need to do in Kingstown this time?" Su Qianxi asked without looking up as she made tea. Chapter 596. You can come often in the future. Su Qianxi used the lid of the teacup to scrape the foam. When she spoke, her hand was slightly shaking. The children were still complaining a few days ago that you did not come to see them. It just so happens that I want to learn how to shoot. Then she looked up at Rong Haiyue. Can you teach me? Of course. Rong Haiyue agreed without thinking, a little excited. Rong Xian looked at Su Qianxi, a little dazed. After 4 years, her daughter had undoubtedly grown a lot. Her cheeks, which used to be soft and round, had now lost some of their childishness, replaced by a bit of maturity and competence. Even the way she spoke and did things were impeccable. Does this mean that she accepts them? Rong Xian cried with joy, but no one said it clearly. After drinking tea and eating some snacks, Su Qianxi took an air gun and handed it to Rong Haiyue. In the vast backyard, there were rattan targets left by Li Jinan, which had not been cleared. This air gun was also Li Jinnan's. After Su Qianxi drove the children away, she practiced with Rong Haiyue. The air gun was much lighter than a pistol and had an automatic loading function. Su Qianxi and Rong Haiyue were learning how to aim today. Rong Haiyue's marksmanship was also very famous in the army. Almost every shot was around the bullseye, and the deviation was not big. And Su Qianxi's accuracy made Rong Haiyue laugh. With your accuracy, fortunately, there is no one behind. Otherwise, there will be an accident. It's just an air gun, not a pistol. Su Qianxi did not care much, holding the gun and aiming at the rattan targets. Li Jianqian and Li Mosin had already installed the small car. Li Jianyue was in the room, holding the doll in her left hand and holding the car in her right hand, playing with it. The two little boys were squatting at the door of the backyard, looking over here. The eyes of the two little babies were shining. The boys' love for machinery, cars, and all kinds of cold weapons was regardless of age. The two little things looked at the gun in Su Qianxi's hand from a distance, their eyes full of desire. Rong Haiyue had already discovered the two little things. He took the gun from Su Qianxi's hand and said, although the air gun is not as lethal as a pistol, this thing can also cause great damage. In the past, many hunters liked to use this kind of gun to hunt some large animals, such as wild boars and bison. If it hit a person's vital point, it could also kill them. With that, Rong Haiyue looked in the direction of the two little guys and warned them with a serious face, especially children, don't touch this kind of thing. It's too dangerous. Su Qianxi then noticed that the two little guys were squatting there and peeking. With a smile on their lips, they glared at them. Got it, Grandpa. Li Jianqian stood up and asked, but what is the vital point? The vital parts are the most important parts of a person's body, which are also the most vulnerable parts, such as the neck, brain, and heart. If they are hit by an air gun, they will die. Rong Haiyue put the gun away and went forward to drive the two children away. Don't do it here. Your mother's aim is too bad. If she misses and hurts the innocent, it will not be good. Li Jianqian laughed rudely. Su Qianxi blushed and stomped her feet. How can she be so good that she can shoot at a 90 degrees angle? Li Mosin heard it, but his heart was slightly shocked, and his little heart had a greedy feeling. Chapter 597. The cooperation between TL and LS, under TL's publicity, became well known. The fact that Li Jinan personally signed the contract also caused a sensation in the industry. Tang Qing, followed by the bodyguard, handed over the signed contract document that had been prepared a long time ago. Li Jinan took it and looked at it carefully. In his mind, L's line of text was always reminding him. There is a secret breach of contract loophole in the TL contract. Do not leak it when signing the contract. Secret breach of contract loophole. Li Jinnan's eyes deliberately stayed on the precautions for a long time. Tang Qing stared at his eyes closely, for fear of missing any expression of his. In the end, Li Jinnan's eyes only glanced at the breach of contract. A few lines of text turned in his mind, and Li Jinnan suddenly realized. It turned out to be like this. Sure enough, it was full of Li Xiqing's style, cunning and insidious. Li Jinnan was now basically sure that L was Li Xiqing, and the person who drafted this document must be Li Xiqing. Although his heart was in turmoil, Li Jinnan's face was still calm. In the entire document, only the breach of contract stayed the shortest. Li Jinnan took out his marker pen, quickly signed, stamped it with the seal of the Li Group, and exchanged it with Tang Qing. Tang Qing also handed over the signed document. After exchanging, the two companies officially announced that they had reached a cooperation. Li Jinan and Tang Qing finally shook hands gently and nodded at each other. Just as the two were about to walk away, Li Jinnan's phone rang. Tang Qing's eyes were always on him. She saw Li Jinnan's face change slightly. In an instant, there was an indescribable joy on his face. He couldn't believe it and said, "You found Tang Menjing?" Tang Qing heard the words and suddenly retracted her hand. The bodyguard behind her was also shocked. He turned sideways vigilantly and walked in front of Tang Qing. However, Li Jinnan did not look at Tang Qing at all. He said with a sullen face, "Be sure to find her. Whether she is in Yunnan or in Myanmar, you must catch her." Yunnan. Myanmar. Tang Qing and the bodyguard exchanged a look, and the two suddenly felt relieved. It seemed that they had mistaken her for someone else. Li Jinnan gave a few more reminders before hanging up. Turning his head, he apologized to Tang Qing, "Sorry, I still have something to do. I have to go." "Yes, President, please." Li Jinnan took a step forward and quickly walked out. Tang Menjing sneered and walked out slowly with her cat-like steps. Back home, Tang Menjing immediately went to the basement. When Jing saw her coming, she took the initiative to open the door. Layer after layer, it was comparable to an iron wall. Moreover, in front of the only exit, there were 4 surveillance cameras installed. There were no blind spots at all. 4 bodyguards were guarding at the same time. Even if the person inside had 3 heads and 6 arms, it would be difficult for him to escape. In addition to Tang Menjing, the only one that could be mobilized here was the servant who had been with the Tang family for 5 or 6 years, Jing Saw. Tang Menjing was very satisfied with Jing Saw's understanding. She nodded and said very sympathetically, "Jing Saw, you haven't had a vacation for a long time, right? Is there a place you want to go?" Chapter 598. Tang Menjing laughed happily, nodded, and was very satisfied. "Sure enough, you have the same fun as me. I also like to train the dead dog inside. Unfortunately, I won't be able to train him for the next few days." Jing Saw was a little surprised and asked, "Miss, are you going on a business trip again?" "Yes, I have to go. I will go to Guangxi tomorrow morning for about 3 days. You have to keep an eye on him these days. Don't let him escape like last time." Jing Saw smiled coldly, and there was a fierce look on her face. She said, "That depends on him. If he doesn't come back, he can only be caught in the drug rehabilitation center. Let's see who will suffer." Tang Menjing simply loved Jing Saw's expression. She smiled proudly and walked in. Jing Saw followed her and said, "He just took the medicine, and now he is so comfortable that he fell asleep. He has been roaring and jumping just now. It's so annoying." Turning on the light, a figure lying inside seemed to sense this side. He turned his back impatiently, covered his face with a pillow, and continued to sleep. "Didn't I ask you to give him medicine on time?" Tang Menjing seemed to be a little unhappy, and her voice was a little low. Jing Saw heard this and looked a little embarrassed. She said, "Miss, didn't you just say that you will give me a holiday?" "I don't want to take a holiday. These days, don't worry about how I torture him, okay?" Tang Menjing smiled and asked, "How do you want to play?" Jing saw that she was really interested, and her face was a little excited. She said, "There are many ways to play." But soon, she restrained herself a little, coughed softly, and lowered her head. The smile on Tang Menjing's face was even more brilliant. She patted Jing Saw on the shoulder and said, "Keep him alive. It took me a lot of effort to pull him back from the gates of hell. Look at my face. Yes, I know what I'm doing." "That's good. I'll leave it to you, Jing Saw." Tang Menjing said sincerely, but she did not stay long and quickly turned away. Jing Sao took a deep look at the man on the bed, quickly turned off the light, and relocked the door layer by layer, guarding the door. Li Xiqing got up from the bed, and a pair of cold and deep eyes shone with strong excitement. 3 days of business trip. In other words, these 3 days, before 8:00 on Saturday morning, Li Jianyue excitedly ran to Su Qianxi's room. Su Qianxi was still sleeping. Li Jianyue took off the little sandals she had just put on and got into her mother's bed, shouting, "Mom, Mom, Mom, get up, get up. Today we are going to the amusement park, the amusement park. Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." Su Qianxi was sleeping soundly and was woken up by the little guy. However, she didn't move. Just when Li Jianyue climbed onto her body, she suddenly stood up and grabbed her little shoulders. She shouted, "I caught it." "Ah!" Li Jianyue screamed, but at the same time, there was a melodious and lively laughter. "Mommy, monster, don't catch me. Help, brother, save me." Su Qianxi held her in her arms and looked fierce. "I want to eat you, and your brother will not come to save you." "Oh, I was eaten." Li Jianyue tilted her head and fell softly, but she quickly raised her head again. She said seriously with a pink face, "Mom, you are too childish. Now that I am done playing with you, you have to take us to the amusement park." This was a special task that her great-grandfather had given her. She must complete it. Chapter 599. Su Qianxi lay on the bed lazily and did not want to move. She said, "Let Mom sleep again. Mom is sleepy." Li Jianyue blinked and lay directly on top of her. She pressed her fluffy little head against her chest and said, "Then let's sleep for a while more." Su Qianxi smiled, touched Li Jianyue's little head, and closed her eyes again. But less than 2 minutes later, the little girl shouted, "Mom, we're almost there. You can get up." "Not yet. Just a little more." "No, Mom doesn't keep her words. You can't do this." Li Jianyue reached out and grabbed her clothes, trying to pull her up, but Su Qianxi was lying motionless. The little girl's face was red. She sat on Su Qianxi's belly, puffed up her little face, and directly inserted 2 index fingers into Su Qianxi's nostrils. She said, "Get up, get up." Su Qianxi laughed. After grabbing her hand, she turned her over and slapped her little butt. "You're asking for a beating." "Ah, Mom is hitting me. Help, brother, help me." Li Jianqian looked in from the outside, blinked, and asked, "Mom, are you done?" "Yes, I'm done." Su Qianxi yawned, pushed Li Jianyue, and took a wet tissue from the bedside to wipe her hands. "Mom is going to brush my teeth and wash my face. Have you had breakfast?" "Yes." Li Jianyue looked proud. "Just waiting for Mom. Mom is a big lazy bug." Su Qianxi pinched her nose, got out of bed, and walked into the bathroom. In the bathroom, on the sink, the things that Li Xiqing had used were still there. Because they had not been used for a long time, they looked a little pale. Su Qianxi glanced at them, took her cup, and said to the toiletries, "Good morning, Mr. Li." After washing, she opened the door and found that the room had been a mess. Li Jianqian covered his head with the quilt and stood on the bed, looking down at Li Jianyue who was kneeling below. "Do you know your mistake?" Li Jianyue looked like she was about to cry. She whimpered, "I know I was wrong. Your Majesty, please forgive me. I won't dare to do it again." Li Mosen stood on the side, with his hands folded and his head slightly lowered. Su Qianxi could see at a glance that he was playing a little eunuch. Seeing Su Qianxi coming out, Li Jianqian immediately put the quilt down, sat on the bed, and said, "My sister forced me to do this." No, it was my brother who said he wanted to be the emperor. No, my brother said he wanted to be the emperor. Su Qianxi said, Su, I Qianxi. The three little guys immediately ran away. Li Jinqian's shoes were still under the bed. Su Qianxi felt a little helpless and shouted, Desu, shoes. Li Jinqian immediately opened the door and ran in. He picked up his shoes and ran away, but when he ran to the door, he seemed to remember something and said, We're the same clothes as us. Not, Su, Qianxi smiled, I, Li, and Su Li. Chapter 600. Women like to be praised as young, and Su Qianxi was no exception. Smiling and drinking the porridge, she said, Thank you, Lu Sao. The old man was reading the newspaper with his presbyopic glasses. He was also very satisfied with Su Qianxi's outfit. He smiled and said, Go to the amusement park today. Take care of the children. You look like a child. Don't be cheated. Of course not. Su Qianxi ate breakfast, not caring. If I am so easily cheated, how can I manage the Li group? This was the truth, but now this truth could not be used by the old man. The old man looked at her and said, It's hard to say. You have 3 children. You didn't ask a man to go with you. Fortunately, I found you a helper. As soon as he said that, the doorbell rang. The old man closed the newspaper happily and said, Speak of the devil, and here he is. Su Qianxi had an ominous feeling in her heart. Swallowing the last mouthful of porridge, she looked at the door. Lu Sao went to open the door, and there stood a tall and thin figure. Louis Han did not wear glasses today. His peach blossom eyes looked bright and energetic, and his facial features were distinct. He was wearing a loose, simple black and white striped t-shirt and fashionable light blue jeans. He looked indescribably handsome. The 3 children saw Louis Han coming in, looked up and said in unison, Hello, Uncle Lu. Louis Han heard their shouts, walked over, and rubbed their little heads. Hello, are you ready? Yes. Li Jianrui was the most excited. You see, I am not wearing a dress today. I am wearing the same as Uncle. Li Jianrui was wearing a small camisole with a small black and white striped top. Not only Li Jianrui, but also Li Jianqian and Li Mosen were wearing the same clothes. Su Qianxi glanced at her own clothes and felt it was particularly dazzling. What she was wearing was similar to Louis Han's. She was the one who bought the parent-child outfit, and the 3 little guys were wearing the same clothes. With Louis Han's outfit, it was like a family of 5. Su Qianxi suddenly felt embarrassed and looked at Grandpa. The old man very cleverly covered his face with the newspaper and even clicked his tongue in wonder. Sigh, the morals of the world are getting worse by the day. There are actually people who rob and kill on the streets. It's too scary. Little Lu, I'll leave Qianqian and the children to you today. You must protect them well. Okay. Louis Han squatted down and picked Li Jianrui up. I will complete the task with honor. Su Qianxi felt uncomfortable. She should have thought of it. The amusement park turned out to be Captain Li's idea. Holding her forehead, she did not know how to face Louis Han. She said, I suddenly remembered that I have something else to do today. Should we go another day? Is Mom still busy? Li Jianrui widened her eyes and pouted. But I really want to go to the amusement park. Mom, can you take me there? Qianqian, we've been waiting for you for so long. How long has it been since you went out with the kids? You just work all day and spend more time with the child. Captain Li covered his face with the newspaper, not daring to look at Su Qianxi. Grandpa. Su Qianxi was a little angry. Although she knew that Grandpa was doing it for her own good, she couldn't help but feel a little disgusted. She knew how Louis Han treated her. Chapter 601. Grandpa had set a trap for her and was waiting for her to fall into it. Didn't he know that she would feel awkward and guilty? Captain Li pretended not to hear and said to Li Jianqian, "You must not run around. You must listen to Mom and take good care of your sister. Do you understand?" Li Jianqian nodded and nodded again. "I know, Great-Grandpa. I will take good care of my sister." "Me too." Li Mosin did not want to fall behind, and Li Jianyue was in Louis Han's arms. She directly put her arms around Louis Han's neck, looked at Su Qianxi and said, "Mom, are you still not full?" He looked at her and smiled. "Let's go." She did not want to go, did not want to go, did not want to go. However, when he saw Li Jianyue's expectant expression, he couldn't bear to disappoint her. Li Jianqian trotted to the dining room, pulled Su Qianxi's hand, and said, "Mom, let's go." Su Qianxi was pulled up by Li Jianqian and walked out. Shuang Yu followed them silently, holding Li Mosin's hand. Soon, they got on the RV together. Today was the weekend, so Yang's driver didn't have to work. Louis Han consciously sat in the driver's seat, and Su Qianxi and Shuang Yu went to the back with the three little guys. The three little guys sat on the sofa, one on the left and one on the right, with an iPad in the middle. Li Jianyue squatted in the middle and stared at them playing games. Su Qianxi leaned back on the sofa, feeling a bit distressed. The swan necklace on her neck was shining brightly. She reached out and grasped it. She couldn't help but think of what he looked like that day. His heart ached. However, there was nothing she could do. Looking at the roof of the car for a long while, she picked up her phone and called Li Jinan. Li Jinan was working overtime at the moment. Seeing that it was Su Qianxi, he immediately answered. "Uncle." "Yes." "How did you handle that matter?" Li Jinan was silent for a moment and said, "I'm planning and preparing. You can live as before. Leave the rest to me, sister-in-law. Do you have any new information?" "Yes." Su Qianxi's eyes lit up and she immediately sat up straight. "What news?" "Leave it to me, second sister-in-law. Aren't you taking the children to the amusement park today? Have fun. Brother-in-law." She still wanted to say something, but he had already hung up. She felt a little discouraged. Thinking that she would have to take care of the three children with Louis Han, she felt even more anxious. Looking at the children, Li Jianqian was particularly good at the game, and from time to time, Li Mosin let out a cry of surprise. Li Jianyue didn't know what Li Mosin was exclaiming about, but when she saw the look of awe on his face, she cooperated and opened her eyes wide. Although Li Jianqian despised Li Jianyue, the feeling of being worshipped like this was very good. Soon, they arrived at the gate of the amusement park. Louis Han parked the car and took the children out. Today was the weekend, so the amusement park was crowded with people. Li Jianyue held Su Qianxi's hand and looked at the people and children inside. "Wow! There are so many people. Let's go. Uncle will show you around." Louis Han picked Li Jianyue up and walked inside. Li Jianqian and Li Mosin also seemed a little excited, chasing each other as they ran inside. Shuang Yu followed closely, for fear of losing him. Su Qianxi fell behind, a little distressed. What the six people did not notice was that there was always a white sports car following behind their car. Just after they stopped, a simple and tall figure also parked the car and followed silently. He was still wearing a dark gray short-sleeved t-shirt, which outlined all the lines of his body, a pair of simple washed jeans, and a pair of simple and refreshing canvas shoes. He wore a big cap on his head and big sunglasses on his face. His flaxen hair covered his ears, revealing only a sapphire cross earring. He came and did not disturb anyone. However, after seeing the clothes they were wearing, his eyes under the sunglasses were colder and deeper. Dash. Chapter 602. Was this a parent-child outfit? Li Xiqing put his hands in his trouser pockets and slowly followed. Li Jianyue was held by Luihan. On her pink little face, her little mouth opened into a big smile, and her round dark eyes looked around. A clown uncle was buying cotton candy, surrounded by many children and parents. Li Jianyue saw the colorful cotton candy and the balloons floating in the wind. Her eyes lit up, and she shouted in a sweet voice, I want, Uncle Lu, I want cotton candy and balloons. Li Jianqian and Li Mosin asked Shuang Yu to buy a stick of candied hawthorn for each of them and walked inside while eating. Luihan lined up to buy cotton candy and balloons for the little girl. Li Jianyue held the balloons in one hand and the cotton candy in the other, licking her face and giggling. From time to time, Su Qianxi took out a wet tissue to wipe her face. Luihan smiled and looked at Su Qianxi's gentle movements, and his eyes flashed with satisfaction. Su Qianxi did not notice Luihan's flashing eyes and said, It's all over your body. Look at yourself, is it sticky? Li Jianyue handed the stick to Su Qianxi and shook her head. It's not sticky. I want to eat more. Don't eat more. If you eat too much, you will have tooth decay. Su Qianxi said righteously, took the stick and threw it into the trash can. When the two little guys entered the amusement park, Li Jianqian and Li Mosin were even more excited than Li Jianyue. They pulled each other and finally urged Luihan to play shooting games. Su Qianxi and Li Jianyue watched them shoot. The little girl pulled Su Qianxi's hand and whispered, Mom, I want to pee. Su Qianxi picked her up, and after saying goodbye to Luihan, she took the little girl to find the toilet. Li Jianyue still did not know how to wear the suspenders. After peeing, she turned it left and right, and finally, it was a mess. When she opened the door of the bathroom and walked out, Su Qianxi was dumbfounded. The one on the left hooked onto the one on the right. It didn't even reach the shoulder. As for the one on the right, it went through the waist and hooked onto the left side. Her pants were about to fall off. After letting the little girl wash her hands, Su Qianxi helped her button up her clothes. Li Jianyue smiled and asked for a hug. They left the bathroom together. Not far from the restroom, there was a small plane that children and adults were playing in. It didn't look very tall, about 3 meters tall. From time to time, the excited laughter of children could be heard. Li Jianyue's eyes lit up when she heard it. Mom, Versu wants to play that. Li Jianyue's voice was sweet and she pointed at the small plane above. It's so fun. Let's play together. Alright, let's go. Su Qianxi put Li Jianyue down and held her hand to line up. The line wasn't long, so it was their turn soon. Su Qianxi fastened Li Jianyue's seatbelt and buckled her own. She whispered, Don't be afraid. It will be very high later. I'm not afraid. Li Jianyue's face was a little excited. She was a little nervous as she looked down. The small plane moved, and Li Jianyue felt that she was about to fly. She screamed, Mom, I'm going to fly. Ah! Her voice was sharp and childish, with a strong excitement, and she laughed loudly. Su Qianxi saw that she was so happy and reached out to hold her. However, suddenly there was a muffled sound below. Without warning, her body became light. Su Qianxi felt that her whole body was about to be thrown out, and her heart skipped a beat. Chapter 603. Li Xiqing bought a cotton candy and held it in his hand. Looking at the big pink cotton candy, he seemed to hear a sweet voice in his mind, "I want more." He was clearly very far away, but his hearing was so good that he could hear the little girl's voice. "Daughter wants to eat cotton candy, Daddy will buy it for you. Whatever you want, Daddy will give it to you." Li Xiqing's eyes under the sunglasses dimmed slightly. Soon, give him 2 more months. At most 2 months, he would go home to be with his wife, son, and daughter. Cotton candy was the most vulnerable in the air. When the wind blew, the fluffy and beautiful cotton candy suddenly flattened and looked sticky. Li Xiqing looked at the cotton candy in his hand and couldn't help but laugh. He actually bought such a thing. Who was it for? Walking to the trash can, he threw the cotton candy in. Suddenly, there were exclamations around. Li Xiqing heard the movement and turned his head to look at the place where everyone was looking. His pupils suddenly contracted, and his heart almost jumped out of his chest at the same time. Wasn't that the thing they just went to play? Su Qianxi was so scared that her face was pale. She wrapped her hands around Li Jianyue and firmly put her head on her head. Li Jianyue's eyes were wide open, and she had no idea what was going on. Looking at Su Qianxi, she asked, "Mom, what's wrong with you?" The staff of the amusement park were shocked and immediately pressed the emergency stop button. Thump. The amusement park immediately stopped. Unfortunately, the small plane that was loose was at the highest point of the amusement park, 3 meters away from the ground. There should be 2 fixed spots under each small plane, but the small plane at the top had obviously fallen off one spot. The entire small plane was hanging askew, on the verge of collapse, and was still swaying gently. The entire small plane was suspended high up in the sky, and 3/4 of the seat was exposed in midair. There was only a very thin connection, and it was barely supporting them from falling. However, the sound of being overwhelmed came from below. The creaking was like a deadly music. Every time it sounded, it was frightening. Almost everyone around looked over, and many people began to take photos with their phones. Cries of surprise rang out continuously, and more people gathered around to watch. Su Qianxi was pale as paper, holding her daughter and looking down. Her heart was about to jump out. Even her breathing became rapid, but she did not dare to move. She shouted, "Help!" It was August, and the temperature outside was as high as 30 degrees Celsius. The blazing sun cast down, making her sweat even more. In a short moment, Su Qianxi was soaked, holding the baby and not daring to move. "Call the police! Call the police! Oh my God, this kind of thing actually happened. Quick, save them! It's so high, if I were to fall." Su Qianxi couldn't help shaking. Holding the baby, she sobbed and shouted helplessly, "Help! Save us!" However, the voices below were getting louder and louder, and more people were coming. Someone had already called the police, and someone had already gone to find help, but no one had come to save them yet. Chapter 604. The crying of the child made the people around even more excited. When the other children in the other seats heard that Li Jianyue was crying, they also panicked and started crying. "Ursu, don't be afraid, don't move, don't cry." Su Qianxi held the child and whispered to comfort her. "It will go down soon, don't be afraid." Li Jianyue cried even louder, her little hand hooking up and holding her mother's hand. It was just that it was this movement that the small plane, which was already on the verge of collapse, shook slightly at that moment. Su Qianxi was even more scared and trembled, but she bit her lower lip and comforted her daughter. "Don't move, Ursu, let's play a game." Li Jianyue stopped crying and looked at Su Qianxi with her wet eyes. Su Qianxi's smile was a bit reluctant, and her voice trembled slightly. She whispered, 1, 2, 3, wooden man, don't talk, don't move. Li Jianyue really did not make a sound, closed her eyes, and did not dare to move. This was the method that Li Mosin taught her. When playing with wooden men, close your eyes, and you won't lose. Su Qianxi also did not dare to move. She closed her eyes, and tears of fear suddenly fell. What to do, what to do, were they going to die here today? Suddenly, there was another exclamation from the crowd, and there was a lot of noise below. Everyone saw that after a dark gray figure squeezed through the crowd, he did not hesitate to climb over the railing. He was very agile and stepped on a small plane, climbing along the branches that connected the small planes. The sound of a human body climbing over the hollow metal came. Su Qianxi opened her eyes and looked down. However, with her current vision, she could see the front side, and the movement came from behind her. She did not dare to turn her head and did not dare to move. Su Qianxi held the child and suddenly heard a cry from below. It's dangerous, you can't go up. Are you crazy? You actually want to climb up? Who is this person? A staff member. This is too bold. The noise was getting louder and louder. Louis Han was playing with the two little boys, and Shuang Yu was watching from behind. She turned her head and looked at the noisy place. It was just that there were too many people and large construction equipment, so it was impossible to see clearly. What happened over there? Li Jianqian looked over there, turned to look at Li Mosin and said, shall we go take a look too? Li Mosin nodded and looked at Louis Han. Louis Han was also curious and pushed them from behind. Let's go and have a look. The group of people walked over there. From afar, Louis Han saw the small plane that was about to crash. Seeing this, Louis Han was shocked and shouted, this is too dangerous. But when he saw the person on the small plane, his expression immediately changed. Qian. Shuang Yu also looked up and saw that the people on it were Su Qianxi and Li Jianyue. Her face changed dramatically, and she immediately rushed up, squeezed through the crowd, and immediately jumped over the railing. Shuang Yu stood below at a loss and found that someone had already taken the lead. That figure. Wasn't that the man Su Qianxi chased at the convention center last time? Now, why did he appear here? Chapter 605. Li Xiqing gasped, carefully grasped the tree trunk, and whispered, unfasten the child's seatbelt, help her up, and leave it to me. Su Qianxi heard this voice and was slightly dazed. She looked at him incredulously, as if she wanted to look into his eyes through the pair of sunglasses. It's him. It's him. This voice, deeply familiar, followed her for 2 lifetimes. Over the years, it constantly echoed in her memories and dreams, so clear and so familiar. It's really him, it's really him. Su Qianxi forgot to breathe for a moment, did not dare to move, and did not dare to touch. What if, when she reached out, he was gone again? Quick! There's no time. Li Xiqing growled, and in his voice, there was calmness and fear. Don't move, calm down. Hearing this voice again, Su Qianxi's mind was blank, and there was only one thought left, it's him, it's really him. He's here to save them. However, Su Qianxi quickly reacted and carefully unfastened the child's seatbelt. Mom, you lost. Li Jianyue opened her eyes and said in a sweet and childish voice. Her face was streaked with dried tears and she was grinning. This little girl still did not know her situation. Li Xiqing's heart was slightly sour, and there was a surge of soreness in his eyes. This was the first time he was so close to his daughter, so close, after 4 years, he could finally look at his daughter face to face. She was really beautiful, just like her mother, very beautiful. Li Xiqing tried to calm himself down and reached out to her. But it was also because of this movement of Su Qianxi's, the sound of the overwhelmed people below rang out. There were a lot of exclamations, and the screams continued. For the first time, Su Qianxi felt that she was so close to death. It was truly soul-stirring. It was even more frightening than her previous death. Her heart almost jumped to her throat, but inexplicably, although Su Qianxi's body was numb and even slightly trembling, her movements were very stable. This was also the first time that Su Qianxi felt that she could be so calm. She coaxed, "Versu, don't move, follow Dad down." Dad, it was just 2 words, but they were like a mallet that fiercely smashed into his heart. It was so ruthless, so heavy, and it gave him an unlimited impact and feeling. Throbbing like crazy, Li Xiqing felt that he could not stand it anymore. Even his hands were trembling with excitement. He whispered, "Don't disturb me. Hurry up." Li Jianyue was lifted by the collar. When she heard the unfamiliar word, "Daddy," she blinked her eyes and asked, "Where is Daddy?" "Here, Daddy is here." Li Xiqing pursed his lips and reached out to pull Li Jianyue over. He shouted, "Someone come and help." Shuang Yu jumped down and waved at Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing carefully moved down, holding the little guy in his arms and slowly moving down. Shuang Yu immediately ran down there, raised her hands, and waved at him. Li Xiqing put the little guy down and said, "Follow Auntie Shuang Yu. I will let go. You jump down, 1, 2, jump." Li Jianyue was quite cooperative. She jumped into Shuang Yu's arms and laughed loudly. Making sure her daughter was safe, she finally let out a sigh of relief. He carefully moved toward her. Dash. Chapter 606. Li Xiqing felt himself trembling. He was scared. For the first time in his life, he was so scared. In the past few years, his life had been on the line countless times, but he had never been really afraid of anything. But now, Li Xiqing was so scared that he was trembling. Calming himself down, he moved up and ordered, "Unbuckle your seatbelt and give me your hand." Su Qianxi heard this familiar voice and cried happily. Her tears kept flowing, but her smile was infinitely wider. He was here. It was him, it was really him. For 4 years, how many times had she fantasized about meeting him? For 4 years, how many times had she looked forward to his return? But even if she had 10 hearts and 10 brains, she could not imagine that they would meet again in this way. Her Mr. Li, her Li Xiqing, was back. Unbuckling her seatbelt, Su Qianxi reached out and touched his palm. Her heart, which had been hanging for 4 years, suddenly calmed down. Because of the fear of death and falling, her body trembled slightly, but because of his palm, she suddenly calmed down. So what? As long as he came, she could live. As long as he came, she would not die. It was like this every time, wasn't it? Su Qianxi held his hand firmly and tried to stand up. She did not dare to move too much, carefully, but at this critical moment, there was nothing under her feet, and the feeling of weightlessness hit her unexpectedly. Su Qianxi's pupils shrank, and a lot of screams pierced her eardrums. Louis Han stood in the crowd and looked at the 2 children. At this moment, seeing this scene, his face suddenly turned pale and he shouted, "Qian." Ah! In the crowd, there was a lot of chaos. Screams and cries were all mixed together, turning into a noise that was difficult to cover up. Bang! A model airplane seat fell to the ground, smashing a hole in the cement floor. Dust flew, and people exclaimed. Under the blazing sun, the man on the branch was holding a woman's hand tightly. He clenched his teeth and his face was cold and stiff. His legs were climbing on the branch and he was as steady as Mount Tai. Shuang Yu put Li Jianyue down and caught Su Qianxi with a pale face. Su Qianxi was soaked. Looking at the man on the top, she narrowed her eyes, gasped, and smiled. Li Xiqing also let out a sigh of relief. The sweat on his forehead had seeped through his clothes and dripped down. Seeing that she was safe and sound, Li Xiqing turned over and went back the way he came. She felt a bit weak in the knees, but she quickly got up and walked toward him. The ride started up again, and the parents and children, who had been scared out of their wits, came down again with pale faces. As soon as Li Xiqing landed, he pressed on his hat and glasses. Walking quickly, he blended into the crowd and disappeared in a flash. Su Qianxi was shocked and immediately ran after him. But when she squeezed into the crowd and tried to find him again, she could no longer see him. He actually ran away. How could this be? How could this be? She couldn't get through the crowd and yelled, "Li Xiqing!" Hearing her cry, he walked faster, lowered his hat, and ran out of the crowd. Su Qianxi squeezed out, and when she came back to herself, Li Xiqing had already disappeared without a trace. His heart instantly panicked. Chapter 607. People were coming and going, the laughter of children, the whispers of pedestrians, the warning of safety announcements, and the discussion of the crisis. All kinds of sounds mixed together, but Su Qianxi felt her ears were cool and her mind was blank. All that was left was a silhouette of his back. Tall and straight, much thinner than before. Wearing a hat and sunglasses, he slightly lowered his head and strode forward without hesitation. He didn't even turn his head or look at her once. He just disappeared into the crowd. Just like the big explosion that year, he disappeared without a trace. Su Qianxi stood at the intersection, looking thin and embarrassed, like a child who had lost her parents. There were no amusement facilities here. In front of her was the edge of the amusement park. Climbing over the high rockery was the outside of the amusement park. It was a dead end. "Li Xiqing, Li Xiqing!" Su Qianxi shouted, her voice trembling. Her crying made her voice sound a bit hoarse. She looked around for a week, going around in circles. But there was nothing. Many people looked over, but he was not there. There was not even a shadow. He didn't even want to look at her. Su Qianxi felt a dull pain in her heart, and she felt that she was about to suffocate. Every time, it was the pain he gave her, so hard, "I know it's you. Where are you?" No one responded. Quite a few people glanced at her and hurriedly walked away. Just then, sweet music sounded, and the unique voice of Yang Zhuoma came into her ears. "Remember, you promised me that you would not let me find you. But you flew so far with the migratory bird returning south. Love is like a kite with a broken string. Can't hold the promise you made. Last time I suddenly couldn't find you. I was scared. I thought something happened to you. There won't be a next time. If I disappear without telling you anything like that day, you can punish me when I come back." I won't resist. What he said seemed to be still ringing in her ears, so clear. At that time, he held her in his hands, hugged her, kissed her gently, and said softly, "You can punish me however you want." The sun was very bright. Under the blazing sun, Su Qianxi was at a loss, squatting down and crying helplessly. "Why do you have to leave? Honey, I miss you so much. Can you come back?" Li Xiqing's back was pressed against the rockery. The temperature was very high, but Li Xiqing did not move. Hearing her cries behind him, Li Xiqing's heart spasmed violently, affecting his tear ducts. The dam that he had been guarding for more than 20 years was mercilessly broken. "I'm here. I'm here." With the back of his head against the rockery, Li Xiqing felt his throat hurt. Listening to her crying, he felt even more guilty. He wanted to pick her up and protect her in his arms, just like before, so that she wouldn't cry, so that she wouldn't suffer. He also wanted to help her dress every day, help her bathe, remind her to wear shoes, and warn her to keep warm, just like before, just like 4 years ago. But now was not the time. He couldn't go back yet. He couldn't expose himself yet. Give him another 2 months, 2 months at most. Chapter 608. Qianqian. Lu Yihan's voice suddenly broke into Li Xiqing's ears. His originally half-closed eyes suddenly opened, and he turned his head to look in that direction. Lu Yihan took the 2 children, and Shuang Yu was holding his daughter, walking toward his woman. The dazzling parent-child outfit was even more obvious in his eyes. He wanted to kill him. That was his, all of it was Li Xiqing's. What right did Lu Yihan have to wear that outfit and accompany his woman? Li Xiqing almost couldn't help rushing up and punching him. Suddenly, he heard the voice of Jing Sao. Where did you go? You were photographed, do you know that? Hearing this, Li Xiqing calmed down a lot, pressed the sapphire earring on his ear, and whispered, How did you know it was me? Earring. Jing Sao's angry voice came. And your wig, your sunglasses are all bought by me. Do you think I'm blind? That woman can't recognize me. I hope so. Finish your business and come back soon. Okay. Li Xiqing responded and looked back in their direction. No one noticed the existence of Li Xiqing. Lu Yihan walked to Su Qianxi, squatted down, and whispered, What's wrong? He doesn't want me, Yihan. He really doesn't want me and the children. Su Qianxi's voice was very choked. It was him just now, he saved us. Lu Yihan was dazed. He knew best who Su Qianxi was talking about. However, how was it possible? Li Xiqing had died long ago. He had been dead for 4 years, forever left in the abandoned factory in the eastern suburbs, never to return. How could it be him? Lu Yihan looked at Su Qianxi, but his expression was indescribably calm. He held her shoulder and said, The children are hungry. Let's go back first, okay? Su Qianxi shook her head and looked up at Lu Yihan, a pair of wet eyes pleading, Han, help me find him, okay? He is here, I am very sure he is here. Can you help me find him? Then, there were tears in her eyes, and she cried sadly, I can't find him. He is hiding. Lu Yihan pursed his lips, helped her stand up, and said, Let's go back first. Yihan, enough, Qianqian. Lu Yihan's voice was a bit fierce, and his pair of peach blossom eyes looked at her with a bit of sharpness. He is dead. He died a long time ago. You are hallucinating again. That is not him. It is just a kind passerby. No, it is really him. Even if his voice turned to ashes, I would still be able to recognize it. It's him, it's him. He is not dead. She was a bit hysterical and pushed him away. It is not an illusion. I am very awake now, Lu Yihan. Su Qianxi scared Li Jianyue, holding Shuang Yu's neck and crying. The crying of the child made Su Qianxi's tear ducts even more. Chapter 609. Each question went straight to Li Xiqing's heart. Don't cry. Don't cry. Li Xiqing looked there, narrowed his eyes slightly, reached out, and pretended to touch her face, wiping her tears. In his memory, that soft touch felt like it was right beside his hand. Every inch of it made him unable to let go, unwilling to let go of it in the slightest. Sorry. Li Xiqing finally glanced at her, then climbed the rockery, crossed the high wall of the amusement park, and jumped down. He still had business to do. Mom. Li Jianyue reached out her little hand and wiped Su Qianxi's tears. Her big eyes were wet, and there were tears on her pink face. Mom, who are you talking to? Your father. The person who just took you down is your father. No, Li Jianxian suddenly said. Mom, you are hallucinating. That is not my father. Su Qianxi turned her head, looked at Daesu incredulously, and said with absolute certainty, It is your father, then it is your father. No, Dad is dead. Everyone knows that Mom has paranoia. What you just saw was an illusion. Li Jianxian looked at Su Qianxi firmly. Let's go home, Mom. Even you don't believe me. Looking at Louis Han and Shuang Yu's eyes, Su Qianxi suddenly felt very ridiculous, but she could not laugh. Holding Li Jianyue, Su Qianxi's tears were even more turbulent. She walked to a shady place and stood still. He is nearby. There is no way out. I don't believe he can run. I will wait for him here. Louis Han looked at her, and his heart felt like it was crawled by a group of devils, itchy and crazy. He wanted to wake her up and tell her that Li Xiqing was dead. In such a big explosion, it was impossible for anyone to survive. Who could survive such a big fire? Su Qianxi had been looking everywhere for 4 years. Although there was no news, she still did not give up. In the past few years, he had taken her to see a lot of psychologists and experienced a lot of things. But she always believed that Li Xiqing was still alive. He was not dead. How was it possible? Everyone knew how Li Xiqing treated Su Qianxi. If he was still alive, why didn't he come back? Louis Han felt like he was going crazy, but he still took a deep breath, stood with the 2 children, and said, Let's wait for a while. If he doesn't show up in 15 minutes, we'll go back, okay? She bit her lip and did not speak. The sun was getting bigger and bigger, and the sunlight was already slanting over, shining at their feet. 20 minutes later, the legendary Li Xiqing still did not show up. Mom, I'm hungry. Li Jianxian said, looking up at her with a pair of dark eyes that were as clear and clean as Li Xiqing's. Li Jianyue pouted and said, Mom, I'm hungry too. Li Mosen's stomach growled, but he didn't say anything. Louis Han stood next to Su Qianxi and reached out to Li Jianyue. Uncle, carry me. Li Jianyue crawled towards Louis Han, pouted and asked, Shall we go for pizza? I haven't had pizza in a while. Ask Mom, Louis Han said. Chapter 610. Su Qianxi walked behind them, looking back every few steps. However, that figure still did not appear. After eating with the children, Su Qianxi went straight home to take a shower, change clothes, and fell into bed. Su Qianxi kept receiving notifications on her Weibo. She opened it and saw many private messages from netizens, as well as countless ads. One by one, without exception, they were all about what happened at the amusement park today. The angles of the pictures were very clever, each showing their expressions and the image of Li Xiqing. However, without exception, so many photos, Li Xiqing did not look like the old Li Xiqing at all. He disguised himself so well that even she did not recognize him the first 2 times. There was also a blogger whose title was particularly eye-catching, the wife of the former president of LS, the current president, Su Qianxi, cried out her late husband's name at the amusement park. In less than 3 hours, the replies had exceeded 30,000, and the number of likes was almost 100,000. Su Qianxi saw the picture. She was squatting on the ground, crying awkwardly and miserably. She couldn't help chuckling, but her eyes couldn't help being wet. It turned out that she was so miserable at that time. In that situation, Li Xiqing actually did not come out. Did he really not want them anymore? Why, for 4 years, there was no news from him. Now that he finally appeared, he escaped so quickly. Was it because he took drugs, so he did not dare to face them. Yes, he took drugs, and Tang Menjing had been imprisoning and abusing him over the years. How did he escape? Su Qianxi was enlightened. Yes, he was such a proud man. How could he come back to her in such an image? What did he want to do? There must be a reason for him to hide, right? Su Qianxi suddenly got up and stared ahead. The golden afternoon sun penetrated through the white and clean window screens, turning into mottled golden spots that hit the ground. It was quiet, but it rippled along with the gentle breeze. Su Qianxi's heart was beating like crazy, and at the same time, she was also in pain. He was hiding. Did he want to quit drugs on his own? It was possible, very possible. No. No. Would a drug addict have that much strength? How could he be so agile? Su Qianxi had learned fighting from Li Jinan for more than 3 years. Although she had only learned 1/10 of Li Jinan's skills, it was more than enough to deal with ordinary gangsters. However, not only was she unable to gain any advantage from Li Xiqing, she was even subdued several times. After 2 moves, she could be sure that Li Xiqing's fighting ability was definitely no less than that of Li Jinan. With such skills and strength, could such a person be a drug addict? However, she could hear everything clearly through the bug. Li Xiqing's howling, his pain, and his desperation. The punches that landed on the flesh wound over and over again, and Tang Menjing's creepy and sick laughter, how real was that? What's going on? What's going on? Su Qianxi's head was a mess, and her ears were ringing. With tears in her eyes, she took out her phone and found a photo of herself with the 2 children. After putting cute animal icons on the faces of the 2 children, she attached the photo and posted on Weibo. Chapter 611. In the busiest commercial street of Kingstown, Li Xiqing entered a well-decorated chain noodle restaurant and ordered a bowl of noodles for himself. When he was halfway through eating, a girl at the table behind him suddenly exclaimed and said, "Su Qianxi posted on Weibo." Li Xiqing paused eating and holding his chopsticks. "Oh, it's so sad." One of the girl's voice was full of sympathy. Her husband has been dead for so many years, and she still thinks he is still alive. I heard that she is neurotic. She misses her husband all the time. It's a mild delusional syndrome. I heard that she often has hallucinations that her husband will appear next to her. Oh, but she still manages such a big company very well. Damn, even a psychopath can do this. Why are we still so low? The girl sneered as she ate. Then you'll need to have such a big company to take over. I heard that it's not just Su Qianxi who did it. Her husband's younger brother, Su Qianxi's uncle, is also the vice president. So what if she has a company? She is still a widow. A young and beautiful woman with 2 children to manage a company. If it were me, I would remarry. What's wrong with doing in my prime? Why should she be a widow for a dead man? You're not her. How would you know what she's thinking? Maybe she's really in love with that ghostly Li Xiqing. You used to regard him as a Prince Charming. Now he has only been dead for a short time, and you have forgotten his name. How cold the world is. Li Xiqing listened to their words, silently finished the noodles, and got up to leave. He found an internet cafe in a remote alley. The owner with a cigarette in his mouth asked, "How long do you want to play? Can I play without an ID?" The boss looked him up and down, took off the cigarette, and said, "Sure. $5 an hour for others, $20 an hour for you. The innermost machine has a separate compartment. That is a VIP room, and no one will go in there." Li Xiqing directly took out a $100 bill, turned around, and walked in. The owner took the bill and checked it. After making sure it was real, he opened the machine for him. The legendary VIP room was just a small, dark compartment with a computer inside. It was the most classic XP system. A little kid was sitting on the ground with his butt bare. When he saw him come in, he raised his head to take a look. The boss walked in, carried the little kid out, and said, "My son, you can play, but I won't refund the money." Li Siqing ignored him and sat down. He opened the webpage and found Su Qianxi's Weibo. Seeing that sentence, Li Siqing felt like crying. Her face in the photo was more mature than before, and she was much thinner than before. His Mrs. Li seemed to be different. Logging into a Weibo account, Li Siqing left a message, "He will see it, and he will come back." However, that message was quickly drowned out by a large number of replies. He logged into L's account on social media and immediately saw a beauty's profile picture pop up. It was a selfie of Su Qianxi herself. She said, "Let's meet. I know you are in Kingstown, Mr. L. It was sent 10 minutes ago." Chapter 612. L. Li. In Li Siqing, she had seen a lot of things that could not be explained by common sense. So, over the years, was it possible that he had actually turned into L, silently watching her? She knew that her idea was a bit absurd. He had been imprisoned for so long. How could he get a communication device and contact her? But it was also such an absurd idea that was getting bigger and bigger in her heart. In the end, it was out of control. Who was L? Li Siqing, Li Siqing, Li Siqing, a voice kept echoing in her mind. Her heart was pounding. After logging in the chat account, she sent a message, "Let's meet up. I know you are in Kingstown. Let's meet up. I know you are in Kingstown, Mr. Li." Li Siqing looked at the line of words on the computer. For the second time in his life, he was caught in such a difficult struggle. The first time was 3 years ago, when Jing Saw invited him to help her deal with the drug trafficking gang. He could go home and reunite with his wife and children. In the future, he would always bear the fear that his family was likely to be retaliated against. Or he could help her collect evidence of their drug trafficking and dig out their boss, wiping them out in one fell swoop. At that time, he struggled for 3 days and 3 nights. At that time, he had not fully recovered from his serious injury. If he chose to go home, Jing Saw would also help him. However, Li Siqing finally chose the second step. Now, he could tell her, let her rest assured, and continue to be a spy. However, one more person knew, one more danger. Jing Saw had repeatedly warned him not to go home and not to see her. Or, he could not tell her, let the outside world think that she was delusional, let her continue to live with this attitude and face the world. In this way, Tang Menjing would let down her guard and focus on dealing with him instead of his family. The people above Tang Menjing would also let down their guard. In the near future, he would be able to uproot them all. What to do? Li Siqing was caught in a dilemma, holding his head in distress and closing his eyes. After sending this message, Su Qianxi felt inexplicably nervous and throbbing. Was it him? It must be him. It must be him, right? It was impossible for there to be 2 people in the world who were so similar, and it was impossible for them to have such similar gazes, wasn't it? Therefore, L must be Li Siqing, no doubt about it. Su Qianxi stared at the letter on the computer. As time passed, about 10 minutes later, the other side actually replied. His reply was within his expectations, but it was also unexpected. Surprised, she stared at the computer screen with her eyes wide open. L, tomorrow night, Kingstown Shijiang Bridge, 8:00. Seeing these words, Su Qianxi's heart beat faster. Staring at the screen for a long while, her fingers quickly typed, "See you there." L, be there or be square writes him, right? Has he finally decided to come clean with me? See you tomorrow. Staring at these words, Su Qianxi smiled, her eyes blurred with tears. Bad guy, I've been waiting for you for 4 years, you know. Mr. Li, do you know that I have waited for you for 4 years? She got off the bed, opened the closet, and started to pick out clothes for the first time. Chapter 6:13. On Sunday, Li Jinan was still working overtime. After Su Qianxi arrived at the company, she worked with him for a while and told him about Elle and meeting Li Xiqing yesterday. She couldn't hide the joy in her eyes. Li Jinan smiled and only said, "Are you sure it was him?" Feeling that it would not be so simple, Li Jinan looked at the document in his hand, but his thoughts were far away. Su Qianxi was silent for a moment and nodded. "I'm sure." Li Jinan glanced at her and quickly returned to the contract signed by TL and LS in front of him. There was indeed a loophole in the breach of contract clause. This loophole was enough for TL to lose a lot of money or even go bankrupt. This method was insidious and cruel. Li Jinan would not believe anyone who told him that it was not Li Xiqing who did it. It was time to launch an attack on TL. Li Jinan knew that that person was also waiting. Su Qianxi was not in the mood to work and quickly left the company. When she returned home, it was already restaurant time. After eating with the child, Su Qianxi went into the room. After trying on several sets of clothes, she finally chose a wide-sleeved floral dress. Li Xiqing liked to see her wearing floral dresses. This was the limited edition dress she bought from a brand a few days ago. Even Su Qianxi felt that she had become very beautiful in it. She put on water makeup and carefully painted her face to make herself look more beautiful. After everything was done, it was already 1913. Su Qianxi hurriedly put on her shoes and drove the modified supercar that Li Xiqing purchased. The closer she got to the destination, the more nervous she became. She was going to see him. She was going to see him. It must be him. Su Qianxi couldn't help smiling, feeling that she had finally become a Buddha after many years of cultivation. Kingstown Shijiang Bridge was located in the middle of the Kingstown River. Across the river, there was a high arch in the center, surrounded by bright colorful lights, changing into luxurious gold from time to time. The high bridge frame was known as the most beautiful landmark of Kingstown. The Bugatti stopped by the bridge. Su Qianxi looked up at the high bridge, her dark and bright eyes reflecting the beautiful scenery. So beautiful. Today, the bridge was beautiful, the river was beautiful, the wind was beautiful, and even the starless and moonless sky made her feel happy. He looked at his watch. It was only 7:38 p.m. She seemed to have come too early. A dark gray figure, wearing big sunglasses and a big hat, avoided all the surveillance cameras and sneaked out of TL Group. No one noticed what kind of damage he had caused to the company, and no one noticed this person coming in and out. Everything was so quiet and smooth that it made one's mood soar. Li Xiqing smiled slightly, pressed the brim of his hat, and quickly returned to the side of the white sports car. From near the TL Group in Kingstown, he sped through the crowd on the highway. Because it was Sunday, there was a lot of traffic. Li Xiqing's car was stuck in the traffic jam for a long time. When he came out, it had been more than 20 minutes. Looking at the time, it was already 7:49. Suddenly, a deafening clap of thunder came from the sky. At the same time, the sapphire earrings on his ears seemed to ring. Li Xiqing pressed the earring, and Jing Sa's voice immediately came over. "Come back." She came back at the last minute. "She will be here soon." Li Xiqing's heart skipped a beat, and his eyes suddenly became cold and sharp. "Why? She seems to have recognized you from the photo at the amusement park yesterday." Everyone go to bed first. Kevin is dead. I will write in the morning and read it tomorrow. Chapter 6:14. Li Xiqing was shocked and his face changed slightly. How is it possible? With his disguise, even Su Qianxi did not recognize him. It was even more impossible for those people up there to recognize him. Jing Sao was not sure and said, most likely. Anyway, come back quickly. If she arrives and doesn't see you here, we will all be in trouble. Li Xiqing knew the seriousness of it. Looking at the time in the car, it was already 19:51 in the evening. There were only 9 minutes left before the agreed time with her. From here to Shijiang Bridge, it would take about 7 or 8 minutes. However, it would take about 20 minutes to get back from here, but it would take more than half an hour to get back from Shijiang Bridge. When will she arrive? Jing Sao called him at this time, so she should not arrive soon. Unless Tang Menjing came back without telling Jing Sao. 20 minutes at the latest. Jing Sao threw another bomb. Li Xiqing's face was more gloomy. 4 years of experience had sharpened his arrogance and sharpness into his bones, and he did not show any of it on his face. But even so, at this moment, Li Xiqing could not help but be slightly shocked. Had she already begun to suspect Jing Sao? She was fine before. Was Jing Sao exposed in just 2 days? A pair of phoenix eyes narrowed slightly, and he began to think secretly. Tang Menjing was a gun sent by the people above. This woman alone was nothing to be afraid of. What was terrible was that this gun was loyal to the people above. If this gun was disturbed, the people above would certainly not let them go. Above, not only Bo Xiao, but also the entire Bo Group. The Bo Group, on the surface, was a business of musical instruments, and its family also had many people who learned musical instruments. But in fact, the Bo Group began to decline from Bo Xiao's father's generation. About 7 or 8 years ago, the current head of the Bo Group, that is, Bo Xiao's father, had begun to get involved in this. TL was just a cover. The real money laundering was in the Bo Group. For so many years, Jing Sao had been lurking in the Tang family because Tang Zhenghao had a close relationship with the Bo Group. In recent years, there had finally been progress. After a while, he could completely solve them. No matter what, it could not be destroyed by him at this time. However, she was still waiting for him. He had an appointment with her at 8 o'clock. Be there or be square. With that woman's temper, would she really wait for him? Hurry up. For the first time, Jing Sao roared at him in a panic. If we are discovered, what we have done over the past few years will not only be in vain, but we may also lose our lives. You might want to die, but I don't. Got it. I'll go back now. Li Xiqing's face was dark. Try to stall her. He had to be there in 20 minutes. Otherwise, not only the deployment of the past 4 years would be destroyed, but even Jing Sao would be implicated by him. In front of him, he seemed to see Su Qianxi's soft smiling face. Her cheeks were slightly red, and her eyes were like a naive deer. See you, don't leave. Li Xiqing's heart ached slightly, and he suddenly felt a sense of helplessness in his chest. He was afraid that he would have to miss his appointment again. I'm sorry. In the pitch-black sky, rolling dark clouds were dense. From time to time, electric snakes would scuttle across, thunder would suddenly appear, and lightning would strike. Chapter 6:15. Raising his head, he saw large drops of rain pattering down from the sky. A drop of water hit her eyelashes, and it quickly rolled down her eyes. It was raining. It was raining so hard. She looked at her watch under the light. It was 8:38 p.m. He was late, a full 38 minutes late. And she had waited for a whole hour. Why is he not here yet? Did he forget? Did he forget that there was another her waiting for him? She picked up her cell phone and wanted to make a call, but she could not make the call. The screen of the cell phone was hit by the raindrops and quickly covered with a layer of water. Su Qianxi's eyes flickered. In her dark and clear eyes, the original joy faded bit by bit. But soon, she curled her lips and gave a self-deprecating smile. This is the result of daydreaming. Except for an online name, she knew nothing about him. She even imagined that this person was very likely to be Li Xiqing, very likely to be him, but now, this possibility could be completely ruled out. If it was Li Xiqing, he would not let her wait for so long, would he? If it was Li Xiqing, he would definitely come, right? The rain was getting heavier and heavier. Perhaps because the rain was too cold, Su Qianxi only felt that her eyes were burning. The warm liquid ran down her cheeks. She looked up at the luxurious Kingstown Bridge, curled her lips, and choked with sobs. You deserve it. It was not him. It must not be him. If it was him, he would definitely come. He loved her so much that he would not let her get wet in the rain, and he would not let her wait. If it was him, he would probably rush over and hug her, warning her sternly, "Don't come here again." Or, "Don't get wet in the rain again." Then he would carry her home, help her undress, and help her take a shower. That was Li Xiqing. Li Xiqing would not break his promise. He definitely would not. Leaning against the railing, Su Qianxi's hair was already wet. However, Su Qianxi did not feel cold. She felt like her heart was being torn apart. Under the heavy rain, Su Qianxi held her cell phone and burst into tears. However, she should not cry at this time, right? What a ridiculous scene. If someone saw it, they would definitely laugh at her. He laughed at her for overestimating herself, at her daydreaming, at her imagination, at her insanity. Su Qianxi also felt ridiculous. Forcing herself to laugh, she let out a laugh, but it was mixed with the sound of crying. Crying and laughing, she was like a psycho. That's right, isn't he a psychopath? She had long been a lunatic. Everyone said that she was delusional, and no one believed her. Everyone looked at her with sympathy. They sympathized with her stupidity and stupidity. Now, even she began to sympathize with herself. A gust of wind blew, and waves surged on the surface of the river. Su Qianxi looked at the boundless dark river, laughed, and said loudly, "Su Qianxi, how can you be so cheap? What a cheap bastard. Too cheap, what right do you have to be so cheap?" Now, she did not even have the right to be cheap. Do you think you are still the Su Qianxi from before? Su Qianxi turned and walked toward the Bugatti, muttering to herself. It seemed to be self-mockery, or maybe it was just a statement. Without Li Xiqing, you are nothing. Dash. Chapter 6:16. The air conditioner was on in the car, and Su Qianxi shivered. Reaching out to turn off the air conditioner, Su Qianxi slowly started the car and drove on the way home. Just behind Su Qianxi, a long black Bentley was quietly parked by the bridge. Li Jinan watched the Bugatti leave, and there was anger in his eyes. But more than that, it was pity. However, it was precisely at a time like this that he couldn't go. Li Xiqing was still alive. He was still alive. He was his brother, the most respected and worshipped brother. He would come back sooner or later. Because he was Li Jinan, so he could not. The Bugatti slowly went away, and the black Bentley slowly followed, just out of her sight. Until he saw the car driving back to the old house and into the front yard, Li Jinan's eyes slightly dimmed. Turn around and go home. Captain Li was sitting on the sofa telling stories to the children. Li Mosen and Li Jianhua were sitting on the sofa, and Li Jianxian was sitting on the ground holding a pillow, listening with relish. When he was fascinated, the sound of the door opening came from outside. Qin Shuhua and Li Xiao were watching TV. Sensing the door opening, they also looked over. Su Qianxi was soaked, and her eyes were a little red. She looked very embarrassed. Qin Shuhua was shocked and quickly greeted her. What happened, Su Qianxi? How did you get like this? Mom! Li Jianhua shouted, and Li Jianxian also looked over. Su Qianxi glanced at the children and shook her head at Qin Shuhua. She forced a smile and shook her head. It's okay. It's raining heavily outside. I couldn't avoid it and got wet. Then you, crying like this because of the rain. When Qin Shuhua was about to say it, Li Xiao pulled her hand. Su Qianxi saw it and smiled. Dad, Mom, I'm going to take a shower first. Captain Li saw something was wrong and urged, hurry up and take a shower. Don't catch a cold. Okay. Su Qianxi quickly walked in and returned to the room. The old man sighed faintly. His cloudy old eyes were filled with deep sorrow. After driving the children to bed, Captain Li sat in front of Qin Shuhua and Li Xiao with his walking stick and said, other than when Xiqing was there, when have you ever seen Qianqian cry like this? Hearing Captain Li's words, Qin Shuhua's eyes became red. These days, she has been thinking that Xiqing came to see her. When she went out, she was so beautiful. Could it be, Li Xiqing had been dead for more than 4 years, and she still could not forget him? What should she do? How pitiful! Although Li Xiqing was her son, Qin Shuhua did not want her to remarry. However, how could Su Qianxi bear it if it went on like this? The old man sighed faintly and shook his head. We can't let her go on like this. Let Ihan take her to the doctor tomorrow. Ihan is a very good child. Qin Shuhua and Li Xiao looked at each other without saying a word. Jing Sao was extremely scared. It had been 15 minutes since she called for Li Xiqing. However, there was no sign that the boy had arrived yet. This made Jing Sao nervous. Her heart, which had been calm after being undercover for 7 or 8 years, suddenly became nervous. You're tuning in to the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.